deputising for me as well. So if we could move forward with the agenda. Number one, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Received apologies from Councillors Brownridge, Dean, Gloucester, Hewitt and Iqbal.
Item number 2 on the agenda, urgent business. Do you have any urgent business? No. Item 3 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Do you have any declarations of interest in the room? Number 4 on the agenda, public question time. Have we received any questions from the public?
No questions received.
Okay. Number 5, minutes of previous meeting. Can we agree then?
Yeah.
And we'll move on to the planning applications. I'm not doing them in order. I'm going to do them in different orders. So the first one is number 10 on the agenda, pages 73 to 188, planning application 343269/19, land at Knowles Lane, Oldham. So could we have the presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is plan application PA 343269/19, which is a hybrid plan application comprising of Part A, which is a full plan application for the development of a new link road between Knowles Lane and Ashbrook Road and associated works, and Part B, which is outline plan application for the development of the 265 dwellings, open space and landscaping, with all matters reserved except for access. The site comprises an irregular shaped area of land on the southeastern edge of Lees that is enclosed by existing development to the north, east and west, with highways infrastructure, Knowles Lane and Thornley Lane, to the south. It is located approximately 2.95 kilometres to the east of Oldham Town Centre, and junction 22 of the M60 is located approximately 5 kilometres to the southwest of the site. The site itself has no other buildings on it. The site is approximately 15.79 hectares in size. The majority of the site comprises vacant open grassland which was historically used for agricultural purposes. The valley of Thornley Brook and land to the north is wooded and accessible to the public. A footpath runs alongside the brook. At the western boundary of the site, an area alongside Thornley Brook has been enclosed as garden space, though the public footpath still crosses through it to Harthead Street. Pedestrian access to the site can presently be achieved from Ashbrook Road on the northern boundary. There is no formal vehicle access to the site, however agricultural vehicle access can be achieved via gates at Manor Farm and from Thornley Lane. Topographically, the site falls from south to north, becoming steeper as you approach Thornley Brook. Thornley Brook itself is located within a shallow but steeply sided valley, generally contained by vegetation. A further unnamed brook flows south to north through the middle of the site. Land near to this brook is also subject to steeper topography. St Agnes's Church of England Primary School and associated playing field and St Agnes's Church are located along the north of Knowles Lane and Thornley Lane, around here. The Grade 2 listed buildings of Knowles Lane Farm, Knowles Lane Farmhouse, Manor House and Flash Cottage are located to west to east respectively along Knowles Lane and Thornley Lane. This shows an aerial view of the site and the surrounding area. The next slide shows the policy designation. In regards to the policy designation, 52% of the site is allocated as a Phase 2 housing allocation, shown in orange, with 48% of the site designated as other protected open land. The link road is annotated by the red line, which runs down the site there. Turning to photos, this shows St Agnes's Church of England School, Manor Farm, Flash Cottages, the wider site. Turning to the proposal, Part A is full permission for a new link road. This slide shows the cross section of the road and its route in relation to the proposed new housing. Again, this slide shows the road in relation to the fall of the valley. This photo shows where the exit for the link road will be, approximately where the large group of trees are on the left of the picture. This picture shows the existing junction with Ashbrook Road and Oldham Road. This image shows a CGI of what the culvert and link road will look like once it's been established and the proposed natural vegetation is matured. Turning to Part B, which is outline permission for 265 dwellings. The application site is shown on the indicative site plan, which, although not a formal representation of what will be built, gives an indication of the form and layout of the site.
Can we have order, please? We're in a meeting. Thank you.
Should it be developed.
Excuse me, could everyone please refrain from interrupting while the officer's speaking, because this is very important. Thank you.
The site section shows how the site will indicatively interact with the development edge to the north of the site with Thornley Brook. Again, the site section shows how the development will interact with the southern edge of the development site and Thornley Lane, with a large landscape buffer between them. The following 3 slides show the site from one viewpoint as it is existing, as it could look in year 1 of completion, and finally 15 years post completion. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Steve to take over and present the rest of the application.
Thank you, Graham. For those of you who don't know, my name's Steve Irvin and I'm the Head of Planning here at Oldham. And I think this is the big question that obviously I think members will have to consider tonight, because on the face of it, the members are looking at a scheme that they previously refused earlier in 2018, and therefore the question is a very simple one here. Why has the application been put forward? Members will be aware that obviously the application was turned down primarily for landscaping reasons, and claiming that the proposal in question would have a detrimental impact on open land and the character area in that particular area. There are unfortunately, however, 3 particular reasons why that particular reason for refusal will not stand up. They are very, very simple ones. They are, as you can see there, that the council's deteriorating housing land supply position, and particularly its need for new market and affordable housing has become significant. The second one is because of that 5-year land supply position, the council's OPAL policy is now out of date, and therefore you cannot, members, apply the full weight that you did previously on that. The third reason is unlike what was considered last time, the site is not in an area of landscape character area. The MPPF now defines what those character areas are, and I'm afraid this particular site is not within it. To take some more details on that, as the members will see the housing land supply position, there was a lot of noise made at the previous meeting about how many completions and how many houses had been built in the ward. There, in your report and on the screen there, is exactly how many completions, houses built, has actually taken place in the ward. As you can see, it's 161 in total over a decade. No one can argue that this particular ward has been overdeveloped. Right? The second position is clearly that there is a need for all kinds of housing. As you can see there, Table 2, which is the first one, it's in your report, quite clearly indicates the amount of affordable housing in this particular area. As you will see, 84 of the units are sheltered and extra care, and therefore it only leaves 51 general needs affordable housing. This scheme would double, providing 60 units, would double the amount of affordable housing in this particular ward. As you can see, that the type of housing affordable property in there from Table 3, which is in the bottom, if you like, the southwest corner of here, indicates that only 34 houses are available. The majority of affordable properties in Springhead, quite clearly flats and bungalows. You will also see that when houses come forward, you can see that from March 2016, on 5 houses, 303 bids. What that is absolutely clear is it clearly indicates that A, there's a need for affordable housing in this particular ward, and B, when it comes up, it is extremely popular. That I think we cannot dismiss. Graham, move on. It's made worse by the fact that, as the members will know, the council cannot currently show a 5-year land supply. At the moment, we have approximately no more than 3 years of housing land supply because we've not built over the last few years enough housing. That's illustrated particularly by the housing delivery test, which shows in the last 3 years the borough has produced 64% of the housing it's required. Under no circumstances, therefore, can we argue that we are producing enough houses in other areas to cover that off. The second bullet point there is very clear. As a consequence of that, and not having a 5-year land supply, the presumption in favour of sustainable development applies to this scheme. Now, the members know full well, but through their training, what that means. It means you should approve the scheme unless a problem that's caused significantly and demonstrably outweighs that harm. You therefore have a clear statement in the law that suggests that. The second thing, of course, that does is, of course, any policies that restrict housing development, like our Opal policy, which we previously used for the reason for review, must have a reduced amount of weight. Third bullet point there is another point that's already been made by Graham in the allocation, that 52% of his site is already allocated for housing purposes. So what we're talking about is the other 48% that previously the members felt significantly and demonstrably outweighed that. That is a very difficult position for the members, because obviously the previous reason for refusal they took on the basis of landscaping harm. It is quite clear you cannot apply the weight this time to this particular application, and you are instructed that unless the landscaping harm significantly and demonstrably causes harm, which I don't think, well, obviously officers don't think that you can do, that you should be granted permission, because the presumption in favour of development kicks in. Graham, if you just kick on. If you just go down. Obviously, here are some of the benefits. It's obviously detailed in your report, but it is absolutely key, that particularly key benefits, it does deliver local plan allocations. Remember that from your planning training, you will remember that where is a local plan allocation and it's in line with that plan, you should grant planning permission for it. That's a clear instruction in government legislation, and indeed a clear instruction on our local plan. It produces obviously up to 265 new family dwellings, 60 affordable dwellings, obviously doubling the amount of affordable general needs housing in the area. Clearly will increase the diversity of your housing stock. And the next point down there is a land transfer suggested by the applicant, that says that a piece of land will be given over to St Agnes Church of England Primary School. The reason for that is either to extend the school or to produce a playing pitch for that school. Again, the members no doubt will give that due weight in the consideration of this particular application. We've already talked about the link road, and no doubt we'll come into that, and you can see below there that there are a considerable number of jobs and that sort of thing that kicks on. Economic benefits, again, there's nothing there that the members won't be surprised about, but there's no way I think you can argue that those aren't economic benefits to the borough and the general economy. And we all know that when you put new housing grows, it obviously puts money into businesses, money into shops, money into those sort of things. There's some social benefits there. I think we're all aware that clearly new housing and new jobs and decent housing and decent jobs clearly are vital for giving people the best start in life that they can. Clearly new housing has a massive economic driver and removes a lot of the social problems that Oldham traditionally suffers from. You see the link road is quite clearly there to deal with the public transport issues. It's been an allocation for the last 20 plus years, and therefore bringing that forward clearly must be given weight. And as you can see there aren't any highways concerns raised, and indeed when we come on to the highways position, you will note that 4 sets of highways engineers have looked at it, and 4 have concluded that it will improve the traffic situation in the area. Moving on, obviously in terms of the environmental benefits, well, they're listed there, and clearly some of that. But obviously there are 2 negative impacts, and your report is quite clear on what they are. First test is clearly on the setting of the listed building. You will see that the conclusion from our conservation officer was that there's less than substantial harm to those existing heritage assets. And members will be aware that when you do that, you then have to consider that against public benefits. You've seen the benefits that are set out earlier in the slide. We consider the long list of benefits of the scheme outweigh that less than substantial harm, and means that it passes the government test on that. The second one is obviously the one that the members raised concern about last time, about the adverse impact of landscaping. Again, the problem with that approach is a very simple one. The approach with that is, of course, because we haven't got a 5-year land supply, the weight that members previously attached to that is significantly weakened by the statistics that you've seen earlier. And then we come on to the planning bandits, which is obviously the key thing to consider here. Yeah. Obviously, we think as officers that it's arguable that the additional housing that arises from this scheme will not be a significant public benefit. It introduces much needed private and affordable housing. It boosts the supply of housing in line with the MPPF and contributes 265 dwellings and 60 affordable units, which, as we've discussed already, doubles the amount of general needs affordable housing in this particular ward. It adds additional housing choice and obviously competition into the housing market. We know about the land that being handed over to St Agnes's Church, and clearly that has a benefit to the school itself. And of course, along with that, it raises the economic and social benefits that we've just talked about, and particularly it creates additional investment in the locality, increases spending in shops and services, results in, amongst other things, jobs in the construction phase, and an amount of construction spending in the general economy that totals up to 37.4 million. And of course, new homes bonuses allows the council to spend it on other money on other services as well. It's also clearly acknowledged in the report that the site is sustainable. It's within range of a series of shops, services, schools and other facilities in Leeds. There's bus localities in the locality, and there's a range of employment opportunities in Leeds and in Oldham itself. It's therefore very clear that the site is clearly locationally sustainable. The environmental benefits will occur, so we're looking there as potential for a significant biodiversity enhancement through additional planting, through the provision of green infrastructure, through the provision of sustainable urban drainage, and that combined with landscaping mitigation provides substantial environmental benefits. There's also a large area of public open space being important because a lot of this site, of course, is privately owned at the moment, not accessible to people, and obviously that all leads to a significant weight in favour of the planning balance. The members will see that we've also included a design code to this. That is to make sure that obviously the design is of a very high quality. Members will be aware that the residential bit of this site is an outline application, and therefore the details of what the houses actually look like is saved for a reserve matters issue. But because we've got a design code in it, both the public and members will have an opportunity to be able to influence that. We've talked a little bit about the heritage benefits. We obviously, as members will be aware, have to give great weight to preserving heritage, but it is quite clear that the public benefits are substantial, and they clearly outweigh the relatively minor harm, less than substantial harm as described by other of that. It clearly doesn't affect the setting of that in that respect. It's also obviously, I think most importantly, the council needs to significantly boost its supply of its housing to meet the borough's needs. The requirement to significantly boost housing in the district, coupled with the fact that there are very few major planning applications that have been completed in this ward in the last 10 years, has to attract substantial weight in favour of granting permission for these proposals. However, the members will be aware that the need to boost supply of housing does not necessarily override all other conditions. As we've explained, there is some harm to the landscaping. It's clearly set out in your report, but we think that amount of harm is limited in the amount of weight that you can apply to it, because it's not an allocated landscape character area. Our Opal policy is out of date for the reasons we've identified around 5-year land supply, and of course because we don't have a 5-year land supply, the presumption in favour of sustainable development applies to this particular case. Ultimately, I think the key test here is to, when you're considering the balance here, members, is whether the harm to the landscape outweighs the significant benefits of the new scheme. We think, as officers, given the significant economic and social benefits of the scheme, plus the positive weight that has to be applied to some of the environmental improvements here, the fact that 52% of the site is already allocated for residential use, it's going to deliver a long-sought policy-compliant link road, which has been required by the local plan for 20 years. The scheme has no design, ecology, amenity, flood risk, drainage, highways, other impacts with sustainable reason for refusal. Because of that, we're recommending approval again, particularly because the previous reason for refusal is weak and is highly unlikely to stand up on appeal. Thank you, Chair.
Could members of the audience please refrain and keep the comments to themselves, because this is a very important subject and everybody has to be heard. Thank you. We'll move on to the speakers now. I think, who's the first speaker? Sue Hodgkiss. And you've got 30 seconds. 3 minutes.
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. This is the same application that was refused in November 2018. Still for 265 houses and a major link road. Still removing Opal 12 protected open land, which accounts for 48% of the land in question. It would bring a potentially dangerous road to the area with more traffic and therefore damage to the environment and health. It would put further strain on services already struggling to cope in such a densely populated area, including healthcare and education. It would cause the loss of valuable green space, one of the very few places in our community used for recreation and exercise. This is a quiet area. People can get away from the otherwise heavily developed, busy areas, and there is much evidence that these green spaces are very important for mental health and well-being. The applicant states the public right-of-way will be unaffected. This is simply not true. Rerouting across a major link road around access roads and houses is not an acceptable alternative to what we currently have. The loss to wildlife and biodiversity will be severe. The applicant states they will provide new opportunities for wildlife. How can taking the habitat away provide them with new opportunities? The loss of visual amenity and harm to the character of the area has always been played down by the applicant. But a major link road, embankment, 70-metre culvert, 265 houses and access roads cannot, as they say, sit comfortably within the surroundings. No amount of tree planting will prevent the harm that will be done. They are now trying to further discredit the quality of the land and views, stating that the land is not part of Warmton undulating uplands and that this area is now urban rather than rural, using the fact that we can actually see Oldham and Manchester in the distance along with telecommunication posts. It matters not whether this land is part of Warmton undulating uplands, as a previous independent planning inspector stated that Opal 12 was an attractive piece of land which served to separate the extensive suburbanisation, and it was imperative it remained open. The fact we can actually see Oldham and Manchester are very weak arguments in supporting this development. The fact we can see urban areas in the distance makes the function of Opal even more important. It is there to provide attractive green areas in between otherwise densely developed conurbations and prevent urban sprawl. The developers point out that there's been no major development in this ward for the past 5 to 10 years. There's a good reason for this.
You have 30 seconds.
The area is full and running out of space due to excessive development in the past. We realise Oldham has housing targets, but we urge you to be strong and guided by your own common sense in realising this development is not suited for this site. It would harm the community and change the characteristics of the villages of Lees, Springhead and Groton forever.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee? No, it's just for the committee. Sorry, sir. Can we move on to the next speaker then? Which is Councillor Hewitt, I think, is it? Or is it the applicant? It's the applicant, yeah. The applicant now, which is Thomas Ralph.
Good evening, Chair and members. My name is Thomas Ralph and I'm the Planning and Land Manager at Russell Homes. We welcome and support the strong recommendation by officers to approve this resubmission of our application. We have worked with the Council and provided additional evidence to support our case regarding the landscape position and the Council's housing land supply, which is set out within the officer's report. We wish to take this opportunity to reinforce why planning permission should be granted for development. We support the officers' view and their evidence that there has been too little housing provided over the last decade in Saddleworth and Lees, leaving a shortage of family and affordable housing. Our scheme will deliver good quality housing to meet this need. This is a very important consideration. It is an objective of the Council to ensure everybody has a quality home to live in, and it is a requirement of local authorities to facilitate this by delivering sufficient housing across the borough. At present, the Council are not able to provide this function as they have significant shortfall in their supply. Taking all factors into consideration, including the availability of brownfield land, there is less than 3 years' supply of new housing in Oldham. This is significantly less than the absolute minimum requirement, which is 5 years. This scheme will contribute towards the new housing needed across the town and is part of a comprehensive housing delivery strategy which includes development on brownfield sites and higher density development within Oldham Town Centre. It is clear from this evidence and from the market research and inquiries that have been received that there is considerable desire and demand from local families, first-time buyers in housing need from within and outside the area who are supportive of new housing on this site as they consider it an opportunity to improve their housing situation. Russell Homes remain committed to the transfer of the land to St Agnes Primary School. This land will provide the school with the opportunity for future expansion as well as provide additional outdoor space for pupils and is recognised in the letter of support from the application for the school. The need for the link road forms part of the Council's adopted development plan and as such its delivery will meet a long-term aspiration of the Council. This addresses a historic bottleneck in the local road network to alleviate congestion, improve highway safety, enhance accessibility
You have 30 seconds left.
Thank you, Chair. And provide new cycleways and footpaths across the site. In summary, this site is in a sustainable location. It is not greenbelt land, it is private land, which, save for a footpath through the site, is used exclusively for grazing. If sites such as this are not delivered, the Council will compound the housing shortage, denying householders of suitable housing accommodation, and members will be under increasing pressure to consider a lease of less sustainable greenbelt land, which is more harmful and has wider consequences. Thank you.
I'll take some questions now from the committee. Councillor Hartness.
Thank you, Chair. Last time when we were here in December, members of the committee raised concerns about the access road. Residents, I understand, have been raising concerns quite a while. I know the councillors have. Yet nothing has been done to address that. And also, you could probably quite legitimately build on 52% of it, but this is just being greedy, and this is what's causing all the objections. So why don't you accept the fact that legitimately you could probably build on 52%, and we couldn't really object to that, yet you want to go ahead and ruin all our green belt, our Opal land, and it just seems to be greed to me.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Chair. As I've already stated, the Link Road is a council aspiration and forms part of the adopted development plan within the scheme. It's been independently assessed by 4 different highways engineers, all coming to the same conclusion that it will provide a benefit to the area. The housing allocation in its own right is for 232 dwellings. To deliver this number of units on the site in its isolation would mean a development of over 70 dwellings per hectare, which wouldn't be characteristic of the area and would be a higher density development, such as you would find in town centres in high-rise, and would have a greater landscape harm than the scheme before you. As the officers have made reference to, the Opal policy is also now out of date due to the crisis of housing land. We're providing 265 homes over both parcels of land, creating a lower density development, which will have a better landscaping strategy towards it, which will minimise the harm in the future.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to ask you, you mentioned about first-time buyers. Well, I've got to tell you, I have fought tooth and nail to get more houses, to get people off the streets and included, but I don't believe this scheme will get one person or bring one person in who can afford. You say affordable housing. What is that? It's not affordable in that area. And I think what you've said all the things in your opinion which will benefit people. And these so-called experts, I've heard them all before, and they're experts that really have been proved wrong over the years. And I've got to tell you, I would like you to tell me, look at this scheme and say, with all the benefits that you say you'll get, and I dare say you will get benefits in back pocket, but I don't think you'll get benefits which will ever be able to, for us in Saddleworth, to put it right and have these green spaces, whether you call it Opal or you call it Greenbelt or call it what you want. I say, why aren't you building and knocking these mills down and building on brownfield sites? Why don't you look at it again and appreciate? I appreciate you need to make a profit, but you've got to appreciate we don't want districts running in where you don't know where Tameside ends and Oldham begins, because that will never be put right by you, me, or any of these people. We've lost it forever. So please look again at the thing. I know you want to make money, but you'd be better with first-time buyers in a cheaper place where you can build cheaper. I don't think this will take people off the streets, do you?
As part of this scheme, we'll be entering into a Section 106 legal agreement with the Council. Within this legal agreement, there is the provision for us to provide 60 affordable housing on the site. So we're entering into a legal contract with the Council. These 60 houses will be given to a housing association, a registered provider, to provide to eligible persons as picked and chosen by the Council of their need list. We work proactively with housing associations across Greater Manchester, such as Onward Homes, to deliver these sort of schemes, and we have a good partnership with those schemes. So we can deliver the affordable housing, and it will be down to the council to ensure eligible persons are put in these properties. So, and that was in response to your question.
Councillor Atta.
Chair, my employer's name has just been mentioned as Onward Homes. They've got nothing to do with the application, but I'm just declaring an interest. Do I need to leave the room?
Sorry, Chair. In response to that, we just work directly with Onward Homes on other schemes across the borough, and we work with them on many cases, along with other housing associations, not just specifically Onward Homes.
You don't have to leave the room. I have a question for you, Mr. L. Have you engaged with the locals that live in Saddleworth, Western Leeds and Leeds? Well, I'm actually asking Mr. Elf that question, please.
We entered into a public consultation event in 2017 to engage with the community about the scheme before you. Since the last scheme was refused in November of last year, the design of the scheme and the elements of the scheme haven't changed. It is the principal matters relating to the scheme, such as the council's handling land supply position and the landscape strategy and the loss of Opal land, which has changed. So the principal merits of the scheme have changed quite significantly, but the design elements of the scheme, which were considered acceptable and appropriate last time at the committee, have not changed. So there was no need to feel that you'd have to reconsult on that basis.
Councillor Hume.
Hello. So what I'm interested in is the landfill. Why is that considered rather than a bridge over it? I'm just interested why you've gone for that option over.
Yes, so the reason it's a culverted link road as opposed to bridge is through discussions with both Oldham Highways and through the Environment Agency. where a bridge would actually provide a greater ecological impact than the culverted link road due to the maintenance strip that would need to be held in perpetuity to allow construction vehicles to go up and down near the bridge to maintain it, whereas the culverted link road allows for an embankment for replacement planting to take place to reduce and mitigate the impact of the link road.
Any more questions for Mr. Elf? Peter?
Thanks, Chair. If this development goes ahead, what type of investment would this bring into Oldham?
So along as the social and economic benefits as highlighted by Mr. Irving, the Head of Planning, there's construction jobs that will be provided to the local community through the construction link road. There's the new homes bonus and council tax revenues that will be delivered to the council. There are also the increased footfall to Lees would enable businesses to gain the benefits of such a scheme as well. The social infrastructure through affordable housing, the link road, which is considered to be a benefit, along with all the lists of benefits that are highlighted by the Head of Planning, alongside the transfer of the land to St Agnes School. Sorry, just to put into context, that's approximately £400,000 in council tax revenue and approximately 37.4 million contributing to the economy overall through the lifetime.
So just to sum it up, I mean, would you have a kind of cost on this kind of development where it would cost?
There aren't direct costs, but we do a thing called an infographic through our consultants that use economic and works and benefits that come out with the figures presented for you on the slide over there, and those are the anticipated benefits of the scheme that would come forward.
Do we have any more questions for Mr. Elf? So I'd like to move on to the next speaker, please, which is Councillor Hewitt.
Steve, you don't 3 minutes don't apply, so be reasonable, please.
Thank you, Chairs. Evening all. I'll not say good evening because it's not really, is it? It's a sad evening. Sad that I'm here again for the 4th time, debating the same 265 houses and a major link road. I'm going to quote, dig deep enough into many of the problems this country faces and you will soon hit land. Soaring inequality and exclusion, the massive cost of renting and buying a decent home, repeated financial crisis sparked by the housing asset bubbles, the collapse of wildlife and ecosystems, the lack of public amenities and the land, the way the land is owned and controlled underlies them all, yet it scarcely features in any political discussions. Development should be led by democratically accountable public bodies and communities, not by private developers, operating according to the need to maximise shareholder returns. Labour Party policy will set out plans for an English sovereign land trust and working with local authorities to advance this process, and it finishes with land for the many, not the few. I became a councillor for Saddle West and Lees in order to be in a position to make a difference to the quality of residents' lives, and I feel privileged to have worked with such a passionate community. I am therefore speaking tonight on behalf of the hundreds of concerned residents to ensure that they have a voice. Residents were very confused when this development was resubmitted. They couldn't see what had actually changed. However, the supposedly 2 significant changes to the first application are the landscape designation and the council's lack of 5-year land supply. The first change, the applicant states that the area is urban rather than rural. It is as simple as this: 48% of the land is other protected open land, Opal 12, and is protected for valid planning reasons. As many of you will know, it has been stated by a previous independent planning inspector that it was imperative that Opal 12 remains open. Strong wording, I think you'll agree, about protecting a space. It has been described as a much needed area of open space in Springhead, an already densely developed part of Saddleworth. The land is of recreational value and provides an important rural setting for the linear park adjoining it, and a number of public footpaths which cross and are widely used as recreational areas of quiet enjoyment. It also separates conurbations and prevents urban sprawl, and an otherwise densely developed area. We all know the unquestionable benefits natural open green space brings in the terms of people's mental health and well-being. There are many studies that show evidence for this. The amount of people who regularly use this area and the public rights of way to get from the heavily developed surrounding areas is a testament to this. The community see a glorious green space, an area valued for generations. Unfortunately, developers just see the pound signs. If, however, the developers want to argue rural versus urban, I would like to point out the following. In the most recent 2018 ward profile produced by Oldham Council's Business Intelligence Service, it refers to the villages of Groton, Springhead and Lees. So by definition, a village is a group of houses and associated buildings larger than a hamlet and smaller than a town, situated in a rural area. To confirm, a rural area, funnily enough, if you look at some of the properties advertised for sale in this area, they are described as being in a rural setting. It is interesting that Russell Holmes wants now described the area as urban and in character, but have referred to their proposed new estate as Lees Village. What will change the area from rural to urban is if this totally inappropriate development is allowed. I can't understand the fact that developers say we can see Manchester and Oldham in the distance, so it is therefore urban in character. I've said it before, but I can see Jodrell Bank from my window. It doesn't mean that we should fill it full of buildings in between. Is it that Oldham Council's Business Intelligence Service, the estate agents and a previous independent planning inspector are all wrong and Russell Holmes are right? The second change is regarding the 5-year land supply. I do not understand why people have been engaged with the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework and the local plan, only to have the intentions of ploughing ahead with the development of this size in an area described as already heavily densely and developed by OMBC. Is the 5-year land supply significantly different now to when we first debated this development back in November 2018? Regarding the previously made point that this area hasn't had any significant development in the last 5 to 10 years, there's really a good reason for this. The area is full and it can't take any more significant development. Surely this is why the applicant is left with targeting one of the few remaining green spaces in the area. However, for one, for anyone who actually knows the area or chooses to look back further, they will see that this area has taken more than its fair share of development. The Saddleworth Parish Plan, produced in 2008 to 2010, showed that 48% of actual development for the whole of the borough took place in Saddleworth, West and Lees, and in previous 5 years to this plan. This is why the area is now full and can't take any more development. I find it very convenient that we are presented with selective information and dates as opposed to looking openly at the area as a whole and what has taken place over the many years. Regardless of the overall council's target, this area has already seen significant developments over the years and should not be punished for failing elsewhere in the borough. In relation to selecting convenience statistics, it is interesting that developers have on several occasions referred to the aspirational and much needed link road. I believe the first mention of this road is from over 30 years ago. Sorry, but in my view, to still refer to it as aspirational after 30 years is absolutely ridiculous. It should have been built. Surely, if after all this time this road has not been built, it should be removed. And this is a quote from previous documentation. The major highway scheme between Leeds New Road and Ashbrook Road is undesirable and compromises the openness of Opal 12. It should be removed from the plan. Furthermore, throughout this entire process, myself and others have been made unable to find anyone who aspires to have this road built now. Times change and we have learned the damage caused by cars on the landscape, the environment and to our health. So to build a new road that will bring more cars to the area at the same time as cutting through the middle of this green lung surely goes against all modern thinking. We need to prevent environmental damage and aim to improve air quality, not make it worse. The damage that roads bring to the environment have a serious impact on health and traffic pollution and is now thought to be the cause of 1 in 5 new childhood asthma cases every year. We should be focusing on improved, efficient and cost-effective public transport. The organisation Campaign for Better Transport have been carrying out research for over 40 years and in a study of 86 new roads, 85 were found to bring more traffic. And I quote from their research, "Induced traffic means that the predicted congestion benefits of a new road are often quickly eroded. Traffic levels on bypass roads can also rise faster than expected due to induced traffic, all of which means that the hope for benefits of a new road can evaporate very quickly." The phenomenon of induced traffic has been observed by transport professionals repeatedly since 1925, and recent reviews have confirmed that induced traffic is still beating forecasts on new roads across the country. Just to finish on the road issues, even if this road was the right thing and needed it, does not match the original, and it would not align to Leeds New Road, but instead create a potentially dangerous staggered junction to a narrow lane. Now, not to get political, but interestingly, one thing is very clear from all the parties. They are all acknowledged that more houses are needed, but these need to be in the right houses, in the right location. I have just taken a few comments from some reports that have been produced and certainly apply to this proposed development. The driving force of development is profit rather than places. New development should be based on recognising communities' goals and identifying suitable land to meet them. The wrong sites are often selected with inadequate provision for infrastructure and often at great environmental costs, while landowners and land promoters capture fantastic profits at public expense. Development should be led by the public interest. We need a public interest-led system in which public bodies determine what land is developed and insist on development that respects ecological limits. Planning is a public service and it should be funded as such rather than relying on income from developers. So it is clear that we should engage with the community regarding developments that can have such a major impact on their lives. But throughout this process, since June 2017, there has been an issue with the community engagement. The developers have done as little as possible, and the only real community engagement has been led by the community itself, making sure people have been kept informed with what was been happening. It also saddens me that the community have to put their hands in their pockets to raise money to keep the people informed and engage with the planning consultant to give advice on what was happening and likely to happen next. This is what us, the council, should be doing and engaging with the community we represent. If a fraction of the time had been given to the community that has clearly been given to the discussions with the applicant, we might not even be here today. Now, some would have us believe it's in the best interest if we just allow this development to happen, as it will save the council money. I find this very hard to swallow. We are here to represent the views of the residents and what's best for our communities. The application was rejected on valid, legitimate reasons of Opal and the visual impact on the area. It should be rejected again for these reasons, but as you can see, there are many more reasons this should be rejected on. It will only cost the council money if they don't defend the decision. The developments have been overwhelmingly rejected now by 3 separate planning committees, councillors both past and present, and hundreds of concerned residents have opposed this development for over 2 years for valid reasons. So I say we, as the elected, should fight this with everything that we have. If not, why are we even here? A recent case in West Orton, Bolton, was rejected by Bolton Council. Despite the council officers recommended it, they made the right decision and they stuck to it and then robustly defended it. They did the right thing without the possible financial consequences tipping the balance of their commitment. Their decision was upheld and reinforced by the planning inspector, even though they only had a 3.5-year land supply. So I'm going to end now. So let's be a council that stand up for what's right. Let's be a council that supports its residents. Let's be a council that residents can be proud of, and let's refuse this development for the 4th time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Take it to the committee for some questions. Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Chairman. I feel, Chairman, that tonight this is our Brexit. We haven't given the right answer, so we've got to keep on discussing it until we get the right answer. Well, I'm saying to you, Chairman, that the previous Chairman and the Chairman before that, who's not here, didn't allow us to have as much time to ask, but we did get as much, as the last speaker said. We did ask all the right questions and we did refuse it for the right reasons. This, to me, hasn't been any changes, and I can't see why. I look very carefully at it and see why I should look at it again. And I can't, because it's the same thing as I've already spent 2 or 3 hours on, and I don't need to go and look at it because I've known it for 70 or 80 years.
Councillor Hartness.
Thank you, Chair. So earlier tonight we were told that the OPOL is out of date, but it wasn't 8 months ago. I'm not quite sure how that's the case. But also this week on Monday...
Councillor Hartness, is this a question?
Yes, it will be, yeah. So this week on Monday, our council leader, Sean Fielding, says that we should be building in the town centre in order to protect the green spaces. So do you agree that we should then test that theory out and actually build in the town centre and protect our green space?
For once, Councillor Hartness, I wholeheartedly agree with you, yes.
Any more questions? Les?
Yeah, we know we have a housing shortage in Oldham because there was recently a news article in the Manchester Evening News about one of our residents having to sleep in a car in Rochdale to get a name down for a house. My question is, if we don't build these houses where we do have available land that already has got some sort of thing, where are we going to build them? Will we not be instructed just to build on green belts when the government decides that that's all we've got left?
Councillor Jacks, it's highly unlikely that the government will take away the council's planning authority. They're reverse to doing it. It's never been done, and I can't see it happening.
Councillor Davis, you've got a question.
Thanks, Chair. What worries me with this is we've had strong advice here from the planning department that this development, if it doesn't go ahead and they appeal it, it can cost us thousands. And the other worrying thing is, in the meantime, the government will say, you've not developed enough land in Oldham, you're going to have to give up more greenbelt land. Where's this to be? Are they going to develop the land in Woodhouses? Are they going to develop the land in Royton? Is it going to be other areas of Saddleworth? And that's the worry, Steve. I mean, what's your answer to that?
Well, this is your precedent, Pete. If you don't set a precedent now and put your foot down, they're going to build wherever they want.
Councillor Davis.
But that's the point, Steve, that you know the way planning works. It's not in our hands a lot of the time. The government set these rules, and if we don't abide by them, they'll oversee it, and it'll cost the council thousands of pounds, and the development will still go ahead, and we'll have to develop other green belt land as well.
Who says we're going to lose the appeal, Pete? I feel we're in a strong position to win that appeal with the inspector when it comes forward.
Councillor Hudson.
I'd just like to point out to Councillor Davis that not long ago we rejected an application in Royton, and I think if that wasn't political, but at least it laid down that we rejected it, and it didn't have half the measures that we're complaining about here. So if we rejected that, surely we should reject this. Or is it one rule for Royton and one rule for Saddleworth?
Councillor Jacks.
Hi, yeah, along with obviously all the other information, we do have several letters here in support of the application saying that, you know, people want affordable houses, we're looking forward to getting new properties coming to the area. What do you say to the people who are asking us to build houses so that they can buy?
Councillor Jacks, that was a Facebook campaign, paid for adverts that was posted within a postal area. Every time I switched Facebook on, I got one of these ads, and they removed all the negative comments and angry faces that came on there.
Okay, we're finished with questions there. We're going to move to the debate, and Steve Irwin would like to start it off, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really sorry to have to do this, but I think we have to get in the real world and some facts, because we simply cannot make things up. We cannot make things up. The reality is you have heard these things, and all these things are wrong, and I have to point this out to the members because you cannot be You've talked about the planning inspector. We've told, yep, the planning inspector had a view, and he did have a view before when we were looking at the 2011 local plan about keeping the land open. The problem was that he was doing that before 5-year housing land supply and the presumption in favour of sustainable development kicked in. Therefore, you can't put weight on that particular argument because the policy position has changed. It is quite clear that this is not allocated landscape character area. People have said, oh, it's not urban, it's rural, blah, blah, blah. That's not the question that you should be answering. The question that was put was, is it in the Warmton Uplands character area or not? It is absolutely clear that it is not. You therefore, part of the reason that it was refused law last time will not stand up because it is not in the Warmton Uplands character area. You've heard about highway stuff. You've been told that you should just ignore the advice of 4 separate highways engineers. That's Transport for Greater Manchester using a model to work out exactly what was going on. My highways engineer sitting to my right, Unity Partnership, our independent now, and the applicant's highways engineer. They all reached the same conclusion, that the new link road would improve the traffic situation and wouldn't cause either danger in terms of the network or highway safety. If you take a position at appeal, you will be faced by 4 sets of highways engineers and words. There is no way at appeal, as being suggested by some of the members, that that argument is going to stand up. We heard about affordable housing. It's absolutely clear from the statistics in your report that there is a need for affordable housing. There is a shortage of affordable housing in this area, and this scheme, as you've heard from the applicant, clearly has said that he's going to produce 60 affordable housing. You have to give that some weight, because you cannot ignore the fact that it will double the amount of affordable housing in the area. That is clearly a substantial planning benefit. We've heard stories about, yep, we should build on brownfield land, we should build on mills. I absolutely agree with that. But the situation is, with our housing need position, that we do not have enough brownfield land. We don't have enough in Oldham. The whole of Greater Manchester does not have enough land. When you look at the spatial framework, it is absolutely clear that all 10 boroughs are having to allocate greenbelt land because they can't find enough sites like this one that's already allocated, all brownfield land, to do that. We can't just simply ignore that. We have to attempt to meet our housing needs for sound reasons. We all know that having a sound, affordable house will improve your life chances. Everybody knows that. I don't think anyone in this room will be disappointed. We have to start building. We heard a classic conversation that experts know nothing. Well, that's fine until you get to a public inquiry, and those experts will be faced, and you can't use words to win public inquiries. This is where this case is going to go, potentially, if it's not approved tonight, on the 23rd. I am very, very strongly telling you that it is not going to go well. The words that were, statements that were being made up simply have no evidence. The members will be aware that they have to consider evidence, not supposition. The area is overdeveloped. I'm literally incredulous about that particular point. There is no way that we would possibly win an argument that this particular area is overdeveloped in any way. The idea that Saddleworth Western Leeds is full is nonsense. The reality is that we have a housing... Entirely right that the position here is that we do have 52% of a site allocated. If you built the 232 houses that are applied for that, you would be building at a level of, as already said by the applicant, of 70 dwellings per hectare. That would be completely out of kilter with every other house surrounding it. Therefore, would not be.
Can Mr. Irving behave, please?
We keep dismissing the link road. I have to be absolutely clear on this particular point. It is a local plan allocation. advice that you have in front of you is clear. If it's an allocation and is in line with a local plan, you should approve it. That's what the legislation says. The consequence of that is you can't simply reinvent the wheel by then suddenly suggesting that you don't like it. We've heard about traffic congestion, we've heard about junction issues, we've heard that, as I've said earlier, 4 sets of highways engineers have assessed this, 4 have come to the same conclusion. You cannot duck this out there. If we want to talk about pollution, you will see that in the report there is reams of stuff around considered by our environmental officer around air pollution, around noise pollution, around light pollution, none of which were considered by them, experts in their field, as a problem. You will see there was a claim on wildlife. You will see in your report that all sorts of bats, badgers, waterfowls, breeding birds, it's all covered in your report. The Greater Manchester Ecology Unit looked at this and came to the conclusion there was no impact on wildlife. You therefore cannot deal with it. You don't, I know you don't want to hear the experts, but that is what the experts have absolutely said.
Shall we take it to the committee for debate?
I will finish this. I finish off, Chair, with the final point. The reason why we are saying that it is different, and I will repeat it again, because there are 3 grounds why the reason for refusal that was put forward previously by members will not stand up. It is 1, that we do not have a housing line supply, and this area has not produced significant amounts of housing. We therefore can't ignore that. Because we do not have a 5-year land supply, the Opal policy that was relied on for the landscaping ring is out of date. Therefore, you cannot apply the weight to do that. 3, the Warmpton Uplands character area, it is not in it. And therefore, the reason
Can you please refrain, sir?
Therefore, the reason for refusal has a significant problem. And the point that Councillor Davies made is right. If we are going to go forward with the same reason for refusal, with the fact that we don't have a 5-year land supply, that the Opal policy is out of date and it's not in the character area, he is probably right. We are probably going to end up with cost. It is all very well going out there and saying we're going to fight this, we're going to fight that, yeah? You can't fight when you have no weapons, and if we have no case, we will have a cost application, and that will be a significant loss to the council. For those reasons, I urge the members...
Commissioner Irving, be heard, please.
I urge the members, finally, to look at the position. There is no evidence to support any of the suggestions that we have. Indeed, there is significant evidence that suggests the opposite. I have heard nothing today that indicates that there is any evidence that suggests that the position put out in the report is wrong. As a consequence, I urge approval of this scheme, Chair. Thank you.
Take it to debate. I think Councillor Williamson put a hand up first, did you?
Thank you. First of all, it's about Opal, the Opal policy, which is a really key issue in not just this application, but a number of others that are happening or waiting to happen around the borough. So you're telling us that this Opal is out of date. When was it looked at and said, oh, by the way, this is out of date? So that would be my first.
I can answer that. The position is that the housing delivery test arrived in February 2019, Councillor. The reality is it's set out that we had a 64% total on our on that, therefore meaning that we were failing that. The second is that as we've done more and more work, because we have to do a report back about the housing delivery test, we discovered that our housing land supply was weak. We've obviously been doing that as part of trying to produce and trying to put forward allocations to solve that via the spatial framework, and of course around our emerging local plan. That has all come to crystallise because we have to write a report in August about the housing delivery test and what we are going to do to meet the needs of that of the borough. I'll just remind the members of course know this, but maybe the public don't. Unlike anybody else, councils are legislatively required to meet housing and employment needs. We are legislatively required to do that. We therefore can't duck that question. That means that councils have to make some difficult decisions around allocating applications. Clearly part of this site is already allocated, which is the reason why I've pushed to that particular position. So that, just to conclude, Councillor, the position is that as we've done more work on the spatial framework, we've done more work on our local plan, and we've done more work on that housing delivery, it's become clear that we don't have a housing land supply. That has impacts on policies being out of date. I'm afraid the Opal policy is one of those.
Councillor Hudson.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I do respect Mr. Irvine's views, and I do understand what he's saying. What I don't understand is this wasn't said when we discussed the application in Royton at the last meeting. So are we to assume that was because the chairman was up for election in Royton? Or are we to assume that the planning department forgot about these things and didn't lecture us on them? I want to be fair in treating this application like I've treated all the other applications, whether they're in Palesworth, in St Paul's, in St Mary's Ward, in Royton, in Saddleworth, in Lees. I want to know why we've been so strong today and we didn't have this advice at the last meeting for Royton, when it was just as important to build the 200 houses, and just the same governments and the same opposition was there. So why weren't we told that? So, Chairman, I do appreciate what's been said, but I would like it to be said about other applications so it looks like a level playing field.
Councillor Hartness.
So there was a comment there about saying that there's no evidence at all that we on this, but obviously earlier it was in one of the previous slides, and then obviously last time, I think it's quite clear it is contrary to Policy 6 on the green infrastructure, Policy 21 protecting natural environment assets, and then Policy 21 protecting open land, and we've got to then balance that against the proposed benefits. So to say that there's no reason why we can't refuse it is incorrect. We've got to decide whether those three policies outweigh the benefits.
Yeah, but I mean, I take the point that Councillor Hart is making, but you've got to read the front of the reason for refusal in particular, and obviously that sets out the reasons why those policies were relevant. And as you can see, and I'm just grabbing the, sorry Chair, I'm just grabbing the reason for refusal just to make it absolutely clear. The reason for refusal quite clearly says that the proposal would result in the loss of Opal 12 land and subsequent landscape harm to the visual amenity of the Warmton undulating uplands area. Now, reason for that, like I say, is because it's now out of date. That policy has less weight, and you can't rely on it having effect on the visual amenity of the Warmton undulating uplands because it's not in that particular area. And the consequence of that is that weakens our reason for refusal, and that is the reason why the matter is back. And I absolutely appreciate why members find that difficult, and I wouldn't normally be putting that forward if we hadn't found out about our worsening housing land supply, and we hadn't found out that the Warmton undulating uplands, which was, I'm afraid, something that our expert put on that, had to roll back from because of that. But there's no easy way of saying that that reason for refusal is weakened because of that. The consequence of that is that we just don't have the reasons or the ammunition, if you like, to fight it on those grounds, because the 5-year land supply weakens the Opal 12 position, and the Warmton undulating uplands, the site's not in it, and the consequence of that, Chair, is I can't ignore that.
Councillor Malik.
Thanks, Chair.
So, excuse me, sir, but we're having a debate within the committee, not with the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question for the officer here. I know I wasn't here at the last planning. Can you tell us what's the difference between this application and the previous application? I know it's been said there has been no changes, but can you stress what the changes have been made?
There aren't any changes, Councillor. It's the position that obviously has been pointed out by the applicant around our worsening 5-year land supply, around the not being in the Warmton area, and the fact that because we haven't got a 5-year land supply, Opal goes. That's the only difference. The actual scheme itself, the 265 units and the link road, is the same as last time.
Any other questions? Should we move to the vote?
I'll move refusal.
I'll second it.
Grounds?
2020, I'll have to put my glasses on to read the official thing. Policy 6, green infrastructure. Policy 21 and 22, protecting natural environmental assets and protecting open land.
Yes.
And in addition, there's no different here than there was in Brighton when we refused that.
Thank you.
Well, I'm afraid I have to ask a question of which particular, what specifically, those are obviously general policies. What actually is the detrimental harm? Just for everyone's information, to identify.
So the information is, and I had a person in your shoes telling me what we did when we wanted to refuse the helicopter thing, and I got it refused. And I went to the inspectors, and they had all the fancy talk, and I told them that without putting it together, you'll not put it back again. It's not like a jigsaw. You can't miss a piece out and then think you can find the piece and fit in. In a few years, if we build on this, the land will have gone. And I think we've got to protect it. I believe the government and the opposition want us to protect it. And I don't care, it's not my job, it's your job to look up what the fancy wording is. But I've told you what you'll find it in. And that's the very 3 reasons you'll find it.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, when I hear you, Councillor Hudson, and obviously we are in a position where we agree to disagree, but we have to identify, if we're going to refuse an application, what the material harm is. That, for everyone's end, is something you have to do if you do it. And the problem is, just saying green infrastructure isn't actually, you've got to identify what green infrastructure is actually being affected, and you also have to identify what natural environmental assets are being affected. The problem you are faced with is that the Greater Manchester Ecology Unit, who obviously deal with these sort of things, have said that the scheme's okay. And without details of exactly what it is, it's difficult to put forward a reason for refusal, which I absolutely accept, Councillor, is my job, but obviously unless I've got a clearer indication, that's difficult.
Councillor Hartness.
Yeah, it might help, because the South Parish Council's reasons for recommending refusal was a loss of visual amenity, an increase in traffic and subsequent road safety concerns. Admittedly, we might not be able to use that one, but then a loss of open space, particularly Opal, and a detrimental impact to the environment, and also a concern. It was also does not consider the lack of infrastructure planning for communities around the site of the Parish Council has concerns in respect to the landfill to create the road embankment. So they seem.
Which is what I said only.
Does anybody else want to comment on the committee?
Before you move on, Chair, as I'm always required to do at this occasion, if you're being asked to refuse an application against officer advice, I've got to remind you that you must do so for valid planning reasons, and In the event of an appeal, you'll be required to provide evidence to support those reasons for refusal, because if not, there is a risk that the council is ordered to pay costs.
Move to the vote.
It's been moved against it, so those against the proposal.
Those against?
Sorry, Chair.
Those in favour of refusal. Those in favour of refusal.
Those in favour of refusal? Those for it? Against?
Those against the refusal.
Against refusal. That's right. Okay. Well, there you go. That's passed then. That's
Chair,
what?
all you've done is not refuse it. Somebody's now got to move approval.
Somebody has to move approval.
Right. Can we move to approval?
Somebody needs to move.
Somebody needs to move it.
Who's going to move it then? Somebody move it then?
Chair, you need to take, pose it and get a seconder.
Right. I'd like to propose and second. I'd like to propose and second the development.
I think this needs to be referred to a different time.
Right, yeah, you do that, go on.
And what Chair is asking, is there anybody there who wants to propose approval? Yeah. So Peter is up.
What a shambles.
Lazy seconding.
Right, all those in favour of the application? Right. Is that unanimous?
No, it's not unanimous.
Right, 7, 1, 2, 3 against. 1, 2, 3.
This needs to be deferred.
Recommendation first.
Defer it. This needs a deferment.
Chairman, you now have to ask if there's anybody against.
Then we go ask for the against, yeah? Then we ask for anybody who wants to come in.
Chair, you've got to ask those against.
Right. You've got to remember, this is the first time
Yes, I
I've ever done this.
appreciate that.
He's making me even more nervous. Isn't he?
Against.
Right, so what? All those against granting approval? So it's been approved.
Kangaroo Court.
Chair, just to conclude, therefore, that the application has been approved subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Right, the application has been approved subject to the conditions put down in the report. And can we please have some silence now, please? We're in a meeting. We're going to adjourn the meeting now for 2 minutes. Okay, we'll go to item number 6 on the agenda. Planning application. Planning application 342008/18, land at Hodgeclough Road, Oldham. A presentation from officers.
Right, thank you, Chair. This is one of two similar applications in a way from the same applicant in the same part of the borough. As a result, some of the issues will be the same in terms of the policy backing, the way you have to determine the application, but of course members will recognise as well that each application does have to be determined on its own merits. So the first application, and again I will unfortunately have to be repeating some of the issues that Mr Irving raised a little bit earlier. This is first application, relates to land on the west side of Hodgeclough Road, on the western edge of Shoulder, and this is an application for 32 new dwellings. And this is the bit where really we have to repeat the same issue, is that there are a number of issues members will see in the report. There's a large amount of opposition from local residents who've raised a number of issues to the scheme, and obviously members have to look at each of those issues in turn and weigh up the relevance of those. But in doing so, you have to look at this in the context of the legislative and policy background to that. And this is similar to some of the advice that members were given on the previous application, which is that in terms of paragraph 11 of the MPPF, there are certain limitations on how members can deal, or how the council rather, can deal with applications and how the applications in particular can be refused. So the most important element of that is the fact that, and it is a fact, the council does not have a 5-year housing land supply. So the requirements of paragraph 11, which is up there on the screen, come into play. And therefore, if members were to look to refuse the application, it's not simply a case of finding that one element of the development is unacceptable and one policy area is unacceptable. You then have to weigh that up against all the other elements, which include the benefits. Now, because the council doesn't have a 5-year housing land supply, the utility balance, as it's called, comes into play, and the presumption in favour of sustainable development. So as you can see on there, there are two scenarios in effect in which, if you found this scheme to be unacceptable, you could justify that. The first is that there are policies in the framework that protect areas and assets of particular importance, provide a clear reason for refusing development proposed. Now, in the MPPF, it does specify those types of land, and Greenbelt is one of those, sites of special scientific interest are others. There is also a recognition of local green space, but local green space doesn't just mean open space, it means a specific designation of the land. None of those apply in this instance, none of the other criteria apply. So we would say that that criteria would be very difficult to justify an alternative to an approval on that basis. The second element is that any adverse impacts of doing so, i.e. granting for sustainable development, would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies in the framework as a whole. So again, that's the point I was making, that if members were to find the scheme unacceptable for any reason, they nevertheless have to weigh it up alongside all the other factors. So this is the site itself. As I say, it's on the western edge of Shoulder, the land immediately to the further west of the site, so you can see that from the colours that this is a more unkempt area of land. That then drops away quite steeply, so this is quite a plateau area on the edge of the existing urban area. It's an area which back in the 1970s, 1980s was occupied by housing previously, but was then cleared and has been maintained as a public open space area since that time. So this is just the application site. It's very difficult to tell, just going back. As you can see, it's the area just to the west with housing on the opposite side of the road. So these are to give some views of the site itself, and as you can see, it's essentially largely, but not entirely, maintained, manicured, grassed areas, little bit of undulation, but generally flat. Again, giving that and that poor tree on its own, sat in the middle of the site. This is just showing you the view as you look away to the west, and you can see the land as it falls away. So it's that area of existing open space. Now just giving the view of what's on the opposite side of Hodgeclough Road, and you see that there are existing houses on there, and there are actually a mix of properties. So there are some terrace properties, some detached, semi-detached type properties on there. So there's a mix of styles of property at the moment. Again, looking further around, so there are two ways of vehicular traffic of getting down to this stretch of Hodgeclough Road. This is one which leads up towards Wilk Street and actually goes past an area which I'll refer to later, which is part of the application in terms of the remediation, if you like, for the loss of the open space. So we're heading, if you like, to the southern end. As you can see, this area of the site is less maintained. So this area, again, looking further over, so the housing site will extend across this particular area, level with effectively the back of the existing housing on the opposite side. This is the layout as proposed. So there's a mix of 2, 3 and 4 bedroomed properties on this. Obviously the shape of the site is just an elongated site, so it's very difficult to get much in the way of visual interest, but the applicants have sought to try to do that by setting the properties at different frontage points. The properties themselves, as you'll see, there's a small variety of different buildings, but again, you've got a mix of styles along there, so different roof heights and so forth on there to try to create some visual interest on the street scene. Again, just giving you an indication of what the views of those properties would be from the site. You'll see in the report there are some comments which have been raised in terms of the design and the character of the area, and question whether this is indeed in accordance with that. And as I say, the house is directly opposite on the other side of Hodgeclough Road. It does have more of a spacious feel to it. Part of that is due to the fact that there are 2 road junctions within there, so obviously the amount of properties you can fit along that same length will be less, and also some larger properties on there with quite wide footprints. But nevertheless, the number for the size of site creates a density of just over 40 per hectare, which is not a highly dense development, and further in the immediate vicinity of the area there are existing developments of that kind of density. The type of housing itself, so again they're just giving you the views here, so there's a mix of different styles. They're all 2-storey, but as you can see, some of them with additional rooms created within the roof space. Again, different style of property, and just another view of the street scene itself. Of the properties itself, obviously the applicant's first choice homes, which members obviously will be aware of, and therefore there is a support towards affordable housing units within here. So that includes, there are 6 of the properties, so 6 of the 32 are for open market sale, 7 are for shared ownership, and 19 are for rent to buy. So although they're social housing schemes as such, you'll see from the character of those types of housing, what we're looking for are aspirant people. They might not have the funding, they might not have the mortgage potential at the moment to buy their own home, but these are the sort of people, this is the opportunity that they would be given to move on that first step of the ladder. So that in itself, the character of the area, this is a mixed area and mixed properties within there. In terms of the impact on properties across Hodgeclough Road, the separation distances between the existing and proposed houses are at the very least in excess of the normal standard you require, so that's 22 metres, and many of them are over 30 metres. So also there is no issues there in terms of loss of privacy and so forth within the development site. Moving further down the site, so we're moving further towards the south, so it's an area where the road will be extended for existing houses, and this is an area which is intended to facilitate the replacement open space, because the main issue, and members will see it in the report, in terms of the objections that have been raised, a major concern of local residents is the loss of the open space at the moment, in particular how well that is used, and also the health benefits and so forth, how visible it is from existing houses and so forth. So that is a predominant issue here, is that the development will lead to the loss of that open area. In order to mitigate that, there are two proposals for open space. The first is on an area immediately to the south. So this is as you're heading down there. So what you can see just on the left-hand side is the end of that road, that stub road that you saw. And beyond that is an area which gradually falls away from the site. There is some informal supervision from houses, although it is recognised, it's clearly not as great as the existing site. And also to provide that with some interest, because it's also not the same size of that site, has been specific design features introduced in there. So it's not merely replacing one grassed area with another grassed area. The intention is to try to develop that into an area which itself will be a feature. These are just giving you those views so you can see towards that area, and this is the interpretation of what that area would be like. So obviously for committee to make their judgments on this, you need to weigh up the importance of that as a mitigation. The second element of mitigation, it's another area which was a former play area, so he fell into disrepair, as I understand, and obviously any equipment on the site was cleared. The idea is to bring that back into a more interesting use, so it could react as a pocket park area using more natural landscaping features, rather than obviously introducing the hard features of slides and so on, which themselves can attract antisocial behaviour. So again, this is a second element of mitigation for the loss of the open space, and obviously if the application is approved, it will be subject to a Section 106 agreement, which not only requires these areas to be provided, but obviously gets a contribution towards the maintenance of those areas in the longer term. So as I say, the number of issues, and they're set out in detail in the report, and there's quite a lengthy number of objections to the site. As I say, there will be a loss of open space, that's established, you can't run away from that, but there is mitigation that's being put forward to that. In terms of traffic and highways issues, again, some concerns have been raised, but this is a fairly small scale development. On-site parking is being provided for these units, and your highway engineers have looked at the application, and there's no evidence to justify a refusal of permission on those grounds. Impact on wildlife was raised, and yes, it's on the edge of a large open area. It's almost inevitable that some wildlife species will utilise that area, although obviously they're less likely to do that when human habitation is on there. But again, Greater Manchester Ecology Unit consulted on the application and have commented, as you might imagine, because most of the site is a kind of manicured grassed area, that there are no specific ecological interests on the site that will be harmed by this particular application. Concern about services in the area as to whether the development will lead to pressure on those services. Again, this is a smallish scale development, and there is no evidence, and again, if that was to be pushed, there needs to be evidence to justify that refusal. As design and character I've already looked at, and the residential amenity, as I say, in the immediate element of it, the houses opposite, there's a suitable relationship, although obviously there's an amenity issue in terms of the loss of the open space. So the report sets out all those issues in detail. Obviously there's a recommendation for approval with the Section 106 agreement for the public open space. We've looked at all those issues, and in the context of the policy requirement of assessing the application, it's determined that the mitigations being proposed added to the other benefits of the site, which again you would have heard of in relation to the previous application, justify refusal. So therefore it's put forward for recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
We have 3 speakers. The first is Tony Martin, objector. You've got 3 minutes.
I'll remind you when the 30 seconds left.
Okay. Good evening. The proposed development is inappropriate and guilty of cramming. 32 dwellings are planned, whilst opposite there is only 22. By utilising 3 blocks of 6 and 3-storey properties, it's disproportionate and not in keeping with the area. The density, massing, blocking, construction and style will have an adverse visual impact, totally ruining the visual amenity and identity of the area. It will overlook and overshadow, causing loss of privacy and light. Our neighbourhood has a diversity of housing, but with a common, consistent theme. This gives it a distinctiveness, a character, a sense of place, a sustainable community which is cohesive, but now it feels threatened as a result of this application, which is full of lies and unfounded statements. The report commissioned are a joke, and the amenity green space at Hodgeclough is the heart of our community. It gives us a sense of place, and it's been instrumental in forging this excellent example of how communities can be rebuilt, even after the mistakes of the past. It's a place where people meet casually, where chance meetings turn a previously unknown neighbour into a friend, and this is how community bonds have been developed and continue to do so. It's where children play and get exercise without the fear of bullying or child predators. It's a safe, observable area, and it's highly valued by the residents. It promotes good mental health and a feeling of well-being to all that use it, having been shut indoors all day at work or school. And with mental health and child obesity being major issues for Oldham, especially St James's, approving applications like this could have dire consequences for our neighbourhood. The proposed mitigation doesn't offer us anything. It just utilises out-of-sight small areas that would be attractive for teenagers to hang out and claim as their own, potentially creating antisocial issues where currently there are none. We can't chuck a ball for our dogs or teach our children to ride a bike in safety on a pocket park or amphitheatre. Sorry, it's now Dead Tree and Borrowers Activity Plateau. I can't replace the biodiversity of the area, which is at our doorstep. And hopefully you've seen the videos and pictures that are sent to you all, which evidences this and the various activities that take place on Hodgeclough's amenity green space. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, the borough should be proud of this neighbourhood. It showcases all that's good about Oldham. Safeguard places like this, reject this wholly inappropriate application, and don't sacrifice our quality of life to chip a few houses off the quotas. Reject it, as the previous case officer, Tessa McKee, did, on loss of open space grounds, as well as the other issues I mentioned before. Reject it because overdeveloping existing thriving communities will harm them forever. Please ask me any questions on any of the points I've raised.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the Councillor Hartness?
Thank you, Chair. And I know you've sent quite a lot of information to us via email on this. You mentioned in your emails and in your statement there something about along the lines of lies and unfounded statements in the reports, and they're not worth the paper written on. So if you could elaborate on what you mean by that. And also you mentioned something about a dead tree, which has confused me a little bit. If you could elaborate on that as well.
I certainly will. In the initial planning statement from First Choice Homes, I scrutinised it and I sent Mr Irving a commented copy, and he actually agreed with me that there was lies in there. One of the basic simple lies was it will have no adverse effect on the amenity. If they build on it, there'll be no amenity, so that in itself is rubbish. Another one was the site has become grassed over and left vacant. It was made into an amenity area, as we've discussed, with S106 money from Barrett's back in 1996. The development will secure improvements in the quality and range and family housing through the induction of 2, 3 and 4 bedroom properties, which will help attract families to live in Oldham whilst reinvigorating the existing estate with new types and styles of properties. That's just an insult. It's basically saying that it will improve the quality of the existing buildings. And to contradict Mr Dickman, there is no terracing on the other side of the road. There's a row of 6 first choice homes which are not visible as you come through the road there, but the maximum of houses together is 3 on that area opposite the field. So in terms of terrace housing, on the opposite side, they all have a distinct style, which is basically the render, and they're all built together by Barratt's to complement each other. This proposal for the other side, as you can see, they're more like as though they've been squashed together. It's as though the video aspect is wrong because they're very narrow and pulled up. Another lie which they put on there is they said the proposal has been designed to respect the context of the surrounding area in terms of scale and appearance. Again, they look nothing like the opposite buildings, and if you drove round that corner you would see that side has been bolted on. They do not match or aesthetically look like the other houses that are there. The scale and development, as I say, they're planning 3 blocks of 6, so the blocking is totally different to that opposite. The massing, the amount of them, while Mr Dickman did point out that the 2 roads there are 32 houses planned and there's 22 opposite. Even allowing for them 2 rows, that is more dense than what we've already currently got. And to go back to what Mr Irving said on the last application, that isn't in context with the area. Now, while there's certain rules about how many properties or dwellings per hectare, in the context of the area, it is overdeveloping. But the main aspect is the area is used by the whole neighbourhood. And to go on to the dead tree that you mentioned, it's basically, initially we were offered a pocket park, and the language is fantastic in these applications. I don't know who wrote them, but it should have RR in his name, like J.R.R. Tolkien or George R.R. Martin, because it's fantasy. We've got, to go on to the next one, we've got a kissing gate over at Purley Bank, but here it was promised as a pocket park, which we pointed out as residents. We all objected, 158 of us objected online, and basically said that the previous 2 parks that have been there were vandalised and taken over by teenagers and became no-go areas. That's since been revised, albeit none of us really, unless we're looking at them applications like I've been every day, are aware of these changes that probably Mr Dickman has shown us tonight. They've just been slotted in this last week and nobody's been made aware to consult on that. Now, the pocket park has been changed to, as I understand it, it's a dead tree. And it's described as a play opportunity. Now, when I was a lad, we used to have a bit of dog muck on a stick, and that was a play opportunity, but nobody would swap you a bag of crisps for it. Point I'm making is, and you're saying about the 106 maintenance of it, both of them with the activity plateau, I'll go on to that in a minute, is basically low maintenance. It's talking about long grass and wildflowers, not what we've got currently, which is an area where the various activities, for those of you not bothered to read the stuff I sent you, is we'll have bouncy castles on there, we'll have children playing rugby on there, we'll have children playing football on there, we'll have just kids sat on the floor just talking and playing. And the reason they can do that is because I live facing it and other residents do. We observe that area and people feel safe leaving 2 or 3 little toddlers this big doing that. Now, if the areas that are described, they would be obscured by the development, this plateau round the corner, and around on Angelico, it's basically it's too far away from the houses. The only ones who would see them are people coming down the hill in vehicles, and they're more interested in watching out for the parked vehicles and stuff coming up the hill. So you never give that a second glance when you're going down for that reason. Now, as I say, with the safe aspect, we can let our kids out there, and I'll tell you an interesting story. My next door neighbour, who's 73, went out one day because a chap had pulled up and stopped his engine while there was 2 little girls playing on the field. So she watched him for a minute and went out and said, like, excuse me, but what are you doing? And she said, he said, well, actually, I'm that little girl's father, but thank you very much for coming and asking me. And that's the sort of area, the neighbourhood we've got, is that the kids can go out there, if there's anything untoward, people will go out and see that. So going to the activity plateau, again, it goes back to the lies aspect, in that this drawing here, Mr Dickman, if you can put, thank you. Now, I've worked out these dimensions because they've put a tiny little scale on, I think it's this one, and there isn't even any dimensions on it. No, if you go back to the plateau one for me, please. That one there. Now, if you look closely, you might need binoculars, but on that middle one, there is a chap with a stick like this, and there's a dog. And on the far side of it, I said far, there's two children playing football. Now, with the current amenity space at Hodgeclough, I constantly go out with my dog, and in the mode area that you described, I worked out it's probably about 70 metres. And I can stand in the middle of that 70 metres and do what that chap's supposed to be doing there. And I'll basically reach the other side, just stop short of it. I can turn around on the spot, do the same, and I'll reach the other side, which is probably about a 35-metre throw. And I'm no Jeff Capes or anything like that. But this area here is probably about 15 to 20 metres across. And the man and his dog and the two kids are either hobbits or borrowers, I'm not sure which, but they're not human beings, because that is not practically possible on an area that size. So again, that is a lie. That is there to deceive the Connells, thinking there's a big open area, and it clearly isn't. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions from the committee? Councillor Williamson.
Sorry, I'm going to go back to open space. I can see that aesthetically it might look rather pleasing. However, I remember that the council decided to put in something that was slightly smaller than that top space in Royton, and they just wanted to do a wildflower meadow. But they never consulted the residents and asked them, what do you want? The residents just want it for the kids to play football and stuff like that, and that's exactly what you want, by the sounds of it. Maybe some, if I can say, tarting up a bit, but that to me just looks over elaborate, I'm sorry. And the other thing is, I've written down here, higgledy-piggledy. You were talking about the housing sizes. Can you just explain a bit more about what they're saying? Because I can't get it in my head, what you've said on here. Thank you.
Yeah, well, opposite the planned development, there are 4 detached houses. I think there's a group of 3 and a group of 2. A couple of groups of 3s and a couple of groups of 2s. Now, what these are planning here is 3 blocks of 6, so it's more like terraced housing. And when you look at what they've done basically is they've had a house which for me should be a certain size and dimension, and they've thought, well, we need to get more in, so what we'll do is we'll stick a bit of it on top, and they've made 2.5 stories. Now, well, you can see there, look at that, it just looks ridiculous. This looks ridiculous. Now, again, in terms of overlooking, one of those is, I've got, where I live, I've got one here and I've got one there. And this one is opposite my neighbour at number 42. And they've actually produced elevation details this week, which that window there is probably about this high above her bedroom window. That is absolutely out of order. How you can sort of recommend that, I do not know. I don't even believe you've been up to the... Have you been up to the area, Mr Dickman?
Yes, of course I've been to the area.
Well, did you bother to contact any of us to let us know you're in the area?
Well, my purpose of visiting the area was to make an assessment of the site and its surroundings. So, no, I didn't knock on people's individual doors, but we did, as you are aware, carried out neighbour consultation arrangements with the local community, and that's evident. And that's evidenced.
When was that,
and that's evidenced by the report and the number of representations that have been made on the application.
No, and to interrupt you there, Mr Dickman, that is down to me delivering
Excuse me,
leaflets to
sir.
houses.
Could you let the officer please finish what he's saying? Thank you.
So the point that has been made is that there was a neighbour consultation exercise. It's in the report. Those representations are not being hidden. They're there for everybody to see. Unfortunately, some of the comments that have been made are, and use of the word to lie in particular. We may have a difference of opinion, but there are no lies in that report at all. You mentioned about there not being terraced houses opposite. There are terraced houses opposite. You've seen the pictures showing the terraced houses. Well, you obviously know the area. The distances, the separation distances between the houses, they meet the minimum standards that would be required. The sizes of the houses meet the standards, the national space standards. They satisfy them. There is a different character in the wider area. So you have, yes, there are larger properties on a large stretch of Hodgeclough Road facing the site, but the area, the character of the area, it's not about replicating just what's immediately opposite. It's about whether this type of development, these style of properties, would be out of character with that particular area. It's for and that's for members to make a decision and obviously to decide on. But it's not right to say they are not in character with the area. There is character of different properties in the area. Members may decide they don't feel that these are an appropriate one, but that's the judgment that they should be capable of making themselves. Thank you.
If I can just say there, to answer that point you've just made, yes, if they're on the standalone...
Sorry, sir, but we can't do this. We have to have this in the debate. So we just got to take questions for now, and then we'll have a debate
I'm still
afterwards.
answering the question, but Mr Dickman interrupted me, so therefore
Right.
can I finish the point? He said to me there's no lies in that, and basically there is. This proposed development site is not designated as open space. Is that true? Is that statement true?
Well, first of all, I'm
No,
afraid
so
the first of
isn't it?
all, the protocol is I'm not here to be asked if the member if a member wishes to ask me that question. I will obviously provide the answer to that question. This is not a designated open space. If you're referring back to the initial comments that were made about what are particular types of sites which can be protected, this is not one of those sites.
No, it's not protected, but it is open space. And that's, I never said a protected open space, I said designated.
Do we have any more questions for Mr Martin from the committee? Councillor Jacks?
Yeah, I'm really interested because you keep talking about these children that have nowhere to play and these teenagers. Where are they going to live if we don't build them houses?
Well, when you keep telling me about housing need, but I would say it's more housing greed. And it's more not what... I mean, the application for both, for Purleybank and Hodgeclough, says to attract people to Oldham. What about the people who live in Oldham? What about the people who pay the council tax already? Do they not matter? Do they not factor into it? Is it all about dragging people in and getting more money of them?
Councillor Jack?
Yeah, no, it's not about getting people in. It's about our young people who will not have anywhere to live if we don't provide them with houses in the future. I'm not talking about building people into the borough. I'm talking about our young people who already live here. Thank you.
But I'm talking about the quality of life of the people who live here.
Councillor Hudson?
I'd like to ask, do your members feel like me that Oldham Council decided to knock these houses down and create green open space? And it feels like my grandma used to say, with progress, it's 8 steps forward and 10 steps back. What do your people feel?
Yeah, I mean, to go back to the history, again, my neighbour was there at the start when Barrett's built Hodgeclough Road, and she was speaking to the foreman who was still on site at the time. He said, we wanted to build here, but the council wouldn't let us. And part of that was because the troubled history it had, they wanted to sort of give people more amenity, more open space, and see how that thrived. Now it's thriving, you want to choke it, that's the way it seems. You really need to sort of... The area's been stable, it's been growing, it's been picking up in value. If you build this, it'll just drag it all down. And I, for one, and many others, will be putting the for sale sign up because I won't want to live there anymore.
Can we move to the next speaker if anybody else has got any other questions at all? Move to the next speaker. It's the applicant, Jamie Smith.
Hi, Jamie, you have 3 minutes and I'll let you know when you're 30 seconds left.
Okay, thanks. Good evening, Chair and members. My name is Jamie Smith and I work for First Choice Homes in Oldham. We welcome the recommendation by officers to approve this application for the construction of 32 family homes on the land at Hodgecliff Road in Shulver. Officers accept the clear and substantial benefits that this scheme will bring to the local community within Shulver. I would like to take this opportunity to reinforce why planning permission should be granted. Firstly, housing need. The Council accepts that there are not enough housing sites within the borough, and to meet current requirements, it is clear that over recent years the Council has not delivered the number of houses it requires. As a result, significant weight should be given to the provision of new housing within the borough. First Choice Homes are working in partnership with Oldham Council's regeneration team in developing the proposals for this area, and this mixed tenure scheme will secure significant improvements to the quality and range of family housing within Shulver. Secondly, the provision of enhanced landscaping and open space. It is recognised by officers that there are numerous areas of good existing open spaces within Shulver, and that the loss of this site to housing will have a marginal impact on the overall supply of unprotected open space within the borough. Nevertheless, a series of mitigation measures are proposed to mitigate the loss of this open space. Areas of enhanced open space, both on and off site, are proposed along with additional tree planting. First Choice Homes has worked in partnership with officers, and extensive discussions have taken place to ensure that the new areas of open space are usable and accessible to all members of the community. Detailed drawings and visualisations have been submitted to illustrate how these spaces will function. First Choice Homes will also enter into a Section 106 agreement to secure the implementation of the proposed off-site works and the ongoing maintenance plans for each location. Thirdly, there have been no objections to the proposals from any statutory consultees. Fourthly, both of the schemes at tonight's planning committee from First Choice Homes, in partnership with Oldham Council, are part of an EU-funded pilot project called Red Wolf, which will reduce carbon emissions by removing gas central heating and replacing it with solar panels, electric heaters and a battery storage system. Finally, the proposed development will have substantial economic and social benefits. These include the provision of jobs for those involved in the construction industry, help to support local businesses as a result of family spending on goods and services, and increase in council tax revenue and new homes bonus receipts. In summary, whilst it is acknowledged that there will be a loss of a small area of open space, the benefits of the scheme far outweigh the loss of the open space.
You have 30 seconds, Mr. Smith.
Not only will the scheme make significant contribution towards the provision of affordable family housing within the local area, it provides an opportunity to create a more vibrant and cohesive environment for residents living in Shulver. First Choice Homes Oldham therefore ask the committee to approve the proposals in line with the planning officer's recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee? Elaine?
I'm just looking at the design, and am I right in thinking the bedroom window is full-length glass?
Sorry, which property are you looking at?
Well, all of them.
There's no plans for lead. Some of them will have obscured glazing.
No, but it's full-length glass, am I right?
Sorry, just to clarify, we go back to some of the detailed designs. I think I get what you're saying. Which these windows.
Yeah, the bedroom windows have got full-length glass.
No, on the first floor.
Yeah.
Yes, they are. That's how they've been designed.
Well, that looks a bit risky to me.
Risky with regards to what safety? The windows will all be to the latest regulations. There has to be some fire escape exits, but they'll all be at a safe height that you can't fall out of them.
No, sorry, I can't accept that. I mean, you know, somebody could stumble, and what kind of reassurance can you offer me that they're not going to go right through the window?
The window that you're looking at, the one that I think you're looking at, it's only the top right panel that will open, so I can't. The floor level is obviously below the window as well. That window won't be, will not be able to be opened, and all the windows will be toughened safety glass.
So quite feasibly, I mean, toughened safety glass, is that going to take, say, the weight of a 15-stone person falling against it?
Sorry, yeah, that's what it's designed for.
Councillor Hume.
So I was so one of the things that was raised by the objector was about the overlooking. I don't know whether that's something that's been sort of considered, or what your kind of assessment of that is, because obviously it's been mentioned as an issue.
We've had numerous meetings with Oldham Council Planning Department, and these issues have been raised, and they're happy with the proposals as they meet all current regulations.
Would you like to mention something, Graham?
Yeah, it's just simply, as obviously members will be aware, there are two, effectively when you want to build a house, there are two types of regulations generally that you need to deal with. One is the planning system and one is the building regulations requirements. And this design, if the windows are of such a style that they would not be safe to use, i.e. the insulation wouldn't be satisfactory, they wouldn't be safe because people would be able to if you like, fall through them or whatever, it would fail the building regulations. So from members' point of view, I suppose it's a design issue. You may feel that then the design is not appropriate, but in terms of the actual details of whether that is a safe style of window, then that would be dealt with under the building regulations, and clearly if it failed they wouldn't be able to erect those types of houses. But I would suspect the applicant has already looked into that particular issue. Thank you.
Councillor Hartness.
Well, it was actually to go on what Councillor Gary said. I know Mr Dickman just said that this would be a building regulation, but there was a bit of a contradiction there, I just thought, because initially you said, oh, well, that's for safety so that you can have a fire escape, and then went back on that and said, oh no, that window doesn't open and a 15-stone person couldn't get through. So there was just a bit of a contradiction there.
Under current fire regs, occupants must be allowed to leave first floor properties, not necessarily that window, but windows on the first floor. Some of them have to be able to be accessed.
Councillor Hudson.
Could you tell me, at First Choice Homes, do you ever think of design and think of where you put in these houses and whether they're going to fit in to the district? Why can't we bring something forward that has a design that doesn't upset the residents that are there?
These schemes have been designed after numerous meetings with the Oldham Planning Department, and these were deemed to be acceptable.
It's not them I'm asking, it's you. They give us advice, and whether we take it or not is up to us. And it's up to you whether you take it or not.
In what respect?
To the respect of making it more fitting and fit into the district, wherever you build. This isn't just my question for this application, it's for your company or your association, whatever it is that you're building, that to think about where you put in them and the design so it fits in, whether it's in St James or Failsworth or Saddleworth or wherever. My point is, like the last point, I want a level playing field, and I'm not getting it.
All I can say is we have numerous design team meetings internally with architects, with other stakeholders. These are the designs that we've proposed for this development.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Can we stick to the committee, please? Can we move to the next speaker, please, which is Councillor Ball.
3-minute rule doesn't apply, Kath. So be reasonable.
Thank you. This piece of land has not been included in our available housing land that we agreed in our GMSF discussions. Although it has been previously built on, it's not brownfield but greenfield. However, because we have reluctantly agreed that homes may have to be built in the Beal Valley, we felt that this land needed to remain house-free to act as a buffer. And other nearby plats that have been put forward for the GMSF, we also removed. One of our residents requested that this piece of land be changed to a town green. We supported this, but after a long discussion at the Town Green Committee, we reluctantly agreed that legally this could not happen, as the council had maintained this as an open space for the benefit of residents for a long time. But to me, this acknowledged that this is an open space for the residents, and we would like it to remain so. Although we do understand, obviously, the need for new homes, we really struggle to see why First Choice Homes didn't use the loads of land that's available in St James's. I keep saying this at all these applications. We have loads of land on Swiftcourt on Sholver, the plots on Durker, and there's also land that's already got planning permission on Sholver, which is the nursery. The ecology survey is years out of date. This is a great area for wildlife, and I'm amazed that virtually none were found. There are peregrine falcons that live and feed there. There are twites and lapwings, that's on some of the bird life. We've got foxes, badgers and deers, and we've got newts. Since the change of use to a tip, and then the tip subsequent closing, the wildlife has come back. New watercourses have developed themselves and the pond life abounds. As local councillors, we are sponsoring a new eco-survey this summer for this area, and we would love this area to be changed into a country park, including new homes, and we have had some initial discussions with City of Trees re this. This is one of the reasons that we do not want homes on this plot. It is at the access area to this possible country park. The replacement land, which is a very late addition, and there's been no extra time for any consultation on, is not really the same as what the residents are losing. While it looks nice, it looks like a park, not the entry to countryside. There is no large play area for the children to play games and have imaginative play, which is what we have now. The other replacement on the Angelica site shows that First Choice Homes have failed to listen to anything that we as councillors have been talking to them about the small park on Top Shoulder, the Pebble Stream. A bridge over a pebble stream, and that's what's on the design. Children climb, children fall. When they fall on sand or grass, that's fine, but to fall on a pebble bed is a fractured skull. And we've asked for the pebble bed stream to be removed in Top Shoulder, and now they've come out with the same design for down here. It might look nice, but it's really not child friendly. I despair how people come up with ideas without speaking to residents and local councillors. It should be the norm to do that. You can say the same about the houses. As Ginny Alexander, our other ward councillor, has stated in the late list, there are too many homes and they're very poor spacing in between. They're not in keeping with the houses that are there now. The last time I spoke at planning about another application, I pointed out that there was insufficient and light application for homeowners to do work on their gable ends. That's not rude, by the way. As there is not enough room to put up a ladder in between homes. It's the same here. Why can't there be 2 car widths in between buildings? And I know, again, we've got this awful phrase which is minimum standards, but minimum standards is not what we want for our residents. And I'm really glad Elaine brought that up, because I spotted the windows on the design and they frightened me to death. If you look at child safety, it is a concern. Some years ago, a well-known musician's toddler was running and tripped and fell through a window, and they were on the 20th floor. A lesson that should be learnt. And I've also, when I worked on A&E, I had to deal with a man whose child had fell out of an upstairs window. And the child was fine, it landed in a bush, he was having a heart attack. A lesson that, again, we should learn. Remember, when all these are built, those new windows will be very secure. But in 20 years' time, when the windows are rotten, they're not going to be secure. And I cringe when I see any child sat on a windowsill on a first floor level room. They look nice and they're not practical. The other thing is, it was an area of coal mining, yet there is no coal board response in the reports, and I'd like to know why. So whilst we recognise the need for housing, we ask here why, when there are other plots available, they haven't been considered. The replacement open space, while looking nice, is not the same kind of space that we are losing, and no thought has been given to any ideas that the residents have. The house style and the space between them are a problem. But finally, when First Choice Homes consulted with the residents, our phone went red hot. This consultation can be held up as how not to do it. It wasn't a consultation at all, just this is what we are doing, full stop. Thanks for listening.
Do we have any questions for Councillor Ball? No. Councillor Hume?
So I'm quite interested, you mentioned about the twite bird, and I know that's a very rare bird, so I'm just wondering if you could go into further detail about that and about what's happening in terms of that.
That's why we're funding an eco-survey, because we've heard them.
We've seen them.
And we've seen them, yeah. And the falcons, the peregrine falcons fly overhead, they've nested, and they actually feed on there's owls as well, but those three birds are lapwings as well, they're quite rare birds.
No more questions? We go to debate. Oh, Councillor Ibrahim.
Can I just ask, when was the ecology report done for the wildlife? Was it recent or has it been done in the past?
It's not immediately up to date. It's in the last couple of years. And the problem is obviously the application itself has been with us for some time, so this isn't a recent application. I think the issues in terms of wildlife, there's a lot of comments about wildlife on the site. It may well be at times, particularly at night, when there's no human activity on the site, that wildlife from the wider open area which adjoins the site utilises the site. But the fact remains that on this particular site, which is largely mown grassed area, there are no species of protected status that have been highlighted on the site.
Do we have anybody else to add to the debate? Councillor Hartnett.
Yes, so looking through that, you've mentioned the ecology thing, so some of the issues of concern have been around the cramping of the site, detrimental impact on the amenity, design not in keeping with the local area, and then the loss of open space. And then we've got to balance that, whether that is a significantly outweighs the benefits. Now, we've had a lot of local knowledge brought to us tonight, which is obviously very important to consider that. And then when we've listened to all these different debates from Councillor Bolt and Tony, and I think my view is that it does significantly outweigh the benefits, and therefore it should be refused on those grounds.
Anybody want to add anything to the debate? Councillor Hugh?
Just to ask, after obviously Councillor Ball's raised a few different things about the coal board and about the twite thing and about the consultation as well, and it's been said a lot about a week's notice on some different aspects of this, and I was just wondering whether I don't know whether you want to comment on any of the kind of aspects that have been brought up by Councillor Ball around that.
Well, I'll deal with the consultation point, Councillor. Well, I mean, we have to produce a report for 5 working days beforehand. That is the legal requirement. This one was released actually earlier. It was because of for a variety of reasons, but it was actually released on the Friday before, so actually it was over 6 working days, and in total 9 days. So the application was in time in that respect. I think the other point about consultation is, yes, there has been some concerns raised by various residents about the consultation or lack of it by the applicant. I take on board exactly what they're saying, and I have some sympathy with that. But for members today, that's not really what they're considering. They're obviously considering the issues that councillors have, planning issues that councillors have raised, and obviously Mr. Dickman has obviously pointed out, and it's for you to make that reason based on planning reasons rather than consultation or lack of it. So hopefully that helps.
Just some mention there of the Coal Authority. Obviously in the report it points out that it's located in a Coal Authority standing advice area. That is what it actually says, is that the Coal Authority do not consider on this particular site there are likely to be any features which could affect the stability of development on the site. Had they felt that that was the case, then they would have required a coal mining risk assessment to be carried out. So effectively it's an informative. As with anything around this area, you know, it's for a developer to take care and make sure they've done adequate investigation of the site. But there's no information there to say that coal mining legacy would be an issue in terms of developing the site.
Would anybody like to add to that? No. Councillor Williamson?
Sorry, I weren't going to come in, but is it not statutory then to get in contact with the coal? Because I remember from when I was on planning a number of years ago, there are statutory organisations that you have to consult to ask about that.
The Coal Authority provide the local authority with maps of local areas, so based on the information they have, that will identify different areas. So obviously those that are not of any risk of coal mining legacy, those where there might be some historical coal mining activity, and those where they know for certain that there is likely to be a problem. So they will give us guidance on that. So this site falls within a coal mining standing advice area. What that tells us is that the Coal Authority are satisfied that we would issue, if planning permission was granted, we would issue an informative, which, as I say, is basically a buyer beware type warning that, notwithstanding that we don't anticipate there are any issues on the site, you still have to take care, as in when you do anything. But the allocation of the site is not one where the Coal Authority is saying to us, we need to be notified and that we need to have a coal mining risk assessment carried out. So it's not a justification for refusing the application. Thank you.
Point of order, please. The gentleman's just said, buyer beware. What does that mean? That must mean that there's something wrong with that site. If you're saying buyer beware, for me, if that had that on it, I'd be like, no thanks.
Thank you.
Perhaps I should obviously have thought of some better language to make. What I meant by buyer beware, what I meant by buyer beware was the fact that if anybody does anything, carries out any development and so forth, there will be some information. There may well be under a site, there may be old drainage or whatever under a site. That's all I meant. It was not meant to say this site is a problem. Going back to that original issue, the Coal Authority have said to us, in this area, they do not consider that there are features from coal mining legacy which would affect development of this site. Nevertheless, we all know, going back in history, that coal mining was never as regulated as it might be. So there's always a risk. That is all I meant. It doesn't specifically relate to this site. It could relate to any site. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Jack.
Yeah, one of the speakers kept mentioning lies. Can you just assure us that everything in the report is factually true?
As far as I am aware, everything in the report is factually true. No, I'm not. Everything in the report is factually true. There are, for instance, there are representations from local residents in there. Obviously, I don't know if they're factually true either. So there are no lies. The question was asked about what lies, what alleged lies are in there, and I gave a response to that. There is nothing that has been identified. If somebody wants to identify to me something in that report which is a lie, as opposed to a difference of opinion, then I will respond to that. But nobody has produced anything for me that says there is something in there which is an untruth. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else got any comments in the debate? Do I have a proposer?
Any proposals? I'll propose refusal of the application based on the comments made earlier.
I'll second that, Chair.
You need to actually clarify the reason for refusal.
Okay, so, well, technically I don't, but okay, I'll go on.
Council speak, please.
On its cramping, detrimental impact on the visual amenity, design not in keeping with the local area, and then loss of open space, which significantly outweighs the benefits of the project.
And we need to bring up the fact that this council, in its wisdom or otherwise, decided to demolish homes and make open space, and we're now going back in time and retracting the open space and putting back out.
Yet again, Chair, I'd just like to remind members, if you are minded to refuse the application against officer advice, you have to do so for valid planning reasons, and you must be able to provide evidence to support those reasons in the event of an appeal, because if not, there's a possibility that the council will have costs awarded against it.
My answer to this is that's why the chairman gets paid. He's got to do that.
Could you have a vote on the refusal, please? By the way, Councillor Shawbatter cannot vote because he went to the loo while we were debating. All those in favour of the refusal? All those for the development? Oh, all those against? Sorry. All those against the refusal? Any abstentions? Everyone got that?
Sorry, Chair. Could you have the refusals again? I didn't see who was voting.
Refusals, please. Could you raise your hand?
No, they're for. Against.
Oh, against. Sorry. Against the refusal. Any abstentions? So what?
Yeah, that's right. That's gone. So now somebody needs to move something else. So the refusal's gone. So is there any other proposal?
Are there any other proposals?
Yeah, just say it's been refused.
It's been refused.
Chairman, could we have the numbers read out so that we would know where we're up to?
The voting on that, the voting...
It's the worst bit of information I've ever known.
Chair, the voting on that application, when the recommendation that was just put to members was to refuse planning permission, 3 members voted in favour of that, 4 members voted against it, and 2 members abstained. Therefore, the decision that was being put was refused. Now, the members now need to make another decision on this, because at the moment there is no decision on this planning application. So the members need to now propose something else that they can vote on.
Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Chair. Can I recommend this application for approval?
Go to the vote now. Somebody second that, please. Councillor Jacks.
Have you seconded it?
Yeah. All those in favour of approval? Put your hands up, please. All those in favour of approval? All those against?
What did you say to change the vote? Because you went against it before.
Excuse me, sir, but we're in a meeting, so could you refrain, please? Abstentions? It's been approved by 3 to 2. Five to 2.
5-3. 1-5-3. 5-4.
Right. It's been approved 5 to 3.
Chair, you're not fit.
Chair, just to confirm then, just be absolutely clear that the matter was approved subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Can we get first response in?
Chair, Chair, if everyone will just calm down, I will try and explain the position. What happened, just to be absolutely clear, what happened was that the first matter was Councillor Harkness put forward a position where he suggested a refusal of the application. The matter was overturned. The consequence of that was that the chair asked for another recommendation. Councillor Davis, seconded by Councillor Jack, seconded and proposed the matter to be approved. On a vote, the matter was granted for and therefore approved. The consequence of that is the matter has been approved subject to condition. I hope that makes it clear for everyone. I will again repeat what I said earlier, just to make it clear. It is Councillor Harkness put the matter forward for approval based on the reasons that he had. The matter was defeated. The chair then asked for another vote. Councillor Davis and Councillor Jacks proposed and seconded the application. On a vote, the matter was approved. As a consequence, the matter was approved subject to conditions. I can't make that clearer.
Right, we're just going to adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes while the audience move. Definitely not. Item number 7, pages 33 to 52. Land at Purley Bank, Sholver, Oldham. Do we have a presentation?
Thank you, Chair. As I said previously, there are a number of elements of this proposal that are in common with the previous application. Same applicant, same issue of an area of existing open space, and the proposals to mitigate against that, and obviously the provision of new affordable housing in the local area. To move through, obviously this is the site, so this is at the northern end of Sholver, Purley Bank running there, so you've got houses on the left hand side, Purley Bank in the middle there, effectively serving the farm, but in effect becoming for vehicular traffic a cul-de-sac at that point, although there are public rights of way that still continue through the site. This is the aerial view of the site, so it's just to say you can see Purley Bank going through the middle of the site there, and it's the strip of sort of lighter green land that you see just to the right of that, with housing on the existing side, and then the land falling away to the rear of the site, eventually towards the Millennium Green. This is the few views now of the site itself. So as I say, similar arrangement. Much of the site is mown grassland. Again, view from the opposite direction. Again, view showing the easterly across the site, and again to the more landscaped areas at the back of the site. This is a view of Purley Bank itself, so obviously you're looking now in a southerly direction and see the houses on the right hand side. Another view of the site and the footpath route that you might have seen or been able to work out on the aerial view through the site. So this is the proposed development itself. So 2 elements to it. Obviously it's on its side, if you like. The north is to the left hand side. So you've got various houses, a mix there, mainly in terraces, but with a couple of semi-detached properties at either end and in between. And then, as you'll see at the bottom left, is an area of the site which is intended to be retained as open space, and some remediation works carried out on that area. Again, similar, you'll see these viewpoints very similar to the last application. So again, giving you a visual across the site and how that would look on the street scene. Same with the house types. Again, some slightly different house types, but essentially a similar design, and obviously those windows feature, again, which were part of the discussions last time. Again, a view showing those, and the house types, again, as you saw, very similar house types on the site. This is moving further up the site, so this is the area moving towards where the retained open space will be at the northern end of the site, and the access that goes through that at the present time. This is, as I say, that particular area from an aerial perspective. This is a close-up version of how that landscaping would be, and one element of that is the provision of a viewpoint in the top corner of the site, which you can see from those views. So as I say, essentially very similar issues to the last application. Provision of affordable housing in the area, similar house types being proposed, a mix of shared ownership and right to buy properties on the site. As you saw there, similar types of houses, similar relationship with the street scene, and the principal issues are those associated with the loss of open space on the site, the use of that area of open space, and whether the mitigation would be sufficient to outweigh that harm. But again, I have to remind members of the issues, which is that you need to weigh up all the items in the context of the tilted balance, in the context of the lack of a 5-year housing land supply, and that if the application were to be refused for any of those reasons, then you need to demonstrate that the harm that would be caused would outweigh the benefits of the provision of new housing and new affordable housing in the area. Thank you, Chair.
We have an objector Stephen Harper, would you like to speak?
Do you have 3 minutes, and I'll remind you, with 30 seconds left.
Okay. You ready? The mitigation offered for Purley Bank in no way compensates for the loss of it. There is no other safe, overviewed play area or green 8 space for anyone to use. It'll be a loss to the young people of the ward who regularly use that land for recreation and free play. Our young people view this land as a noticeable of their park. It's an integral and intrinsic part of their play area. They feel safe there. This is their green area. Purley has been utilised for cricket, parachute games, cycling. I've taught my kids to ride bikes there, to name but a few activities seen there. Residents often oversee children from this area visit the park just to use the pitch, only to find it's already been playing as they set up their games on the green space instead. Please don't take that away from them. Younger children can be watched by parents from a safe distance, allowing the children to feel free enough to develop their self-confidence, social skills and problem-solving skills in safety. They connect with nature and can explore the wild habitat that Purley Bank gives them. This is a unique opportunity for young people, and this is the only space in the area safely that can offer them that. To take it away from the young people would be a travesty of the highest order. Please reject the planning submission for the sake of the young people of Shover. This land is for everyone, including the most vulnerable in our neighbourhood. There are plenty of disabled residents and people who are physically impaired who that is their only access to green space in the vicinity. If you take it away from them, rely on it, their needs will go unmet if these plans go ahead, and that's incomprehensible. Our young people's resilience, mental well-being is strengthened and enhanced by this safe, open green space, and such is highly valued, dare I say, priceless for this reason alone. This is proven in countless studies and documents, including Oldham's own recent publications. Oldham councillors fully acknowledge the positive impact that spaces such as Purley Bank have upon mental health and wellness. Residents, both young and old, use Purley to connect with nature, immerse in the tranquility, and results in positive attitudes towards their endeavours in life. Let Purley land flourish alongside our young people's mental health and wellness. Reject this application. Shover is in the peripheries of the GMSF land, with a disproportionate number of houses to be built within a 1 mile radius of Purley Bank land. This makes it even more precious and irreplaceable. The residents deserve this natural, safe space in the midst of a developing concrete jungle. And don't let yourself be the responsible one for taking that away from people who won't have it anywhere else. Being no doubt that the alternative land offered by First Choice in no way will make up for what the wealth of the community is if Purley Bank is taken away from the young people, and the amount of maintenance that First Choice does on its existing stuff isn't exactly highly on the agenda. Young people's needs must be paramount in your mind when making a decision. We implore you to reject this application. The mitigation land is tucked away. It lacks the open, safe and natural aspect that Purley Bank land affords the residents of Shover. It's an informal meeting place for all residents. It's a central, safe and open space, and it's crucial to the continuation of the strong community spirit that the residents have worked hard together to achieve over the years. With that in the foremost of your mind, and you please must reject these plans. Just one thing else is that the first core principle of the MPFF is that planning should be genuinely plan-led. Oldham has a plan to ensure this. To build on PB, an allocated site will conflict with this principle and make a mockery of Oldham's local plan. You fail to use brownfield land in passing applications of allocated sites because this is a controversial application such as Purley and now being favorably looked on by the LPA to meet housing targets. Don't...
Do we have any questions from committee for Mr Harper? Councillor Hudson.
Yes, Mr Harper, if you're trying to get me on board, I'm a little bit worried about this bit. Do you agree with this bit? The council does not have the same respect for this area as the higher council taxpayers of Saddleworth. Well, they haven't shown much respect tonight to Saddleworth, but I'm asking you, do you agree with that?
Agree with... Just clarify that again, you lost me. Sorry. Look, council tax is what it is. We all pay it whether or not. Yeah, I just live there. I just want my family to have a nice place to live. I'm not knocking anybody else. I'm not trying to hurt anybody else. I just want to live with my family. And
but I don't know what you mean by show the same respect, because they haven't shown us any respect.
I didn't say that.
I'm saying, do you agree with this person who said this?
I don't know what the context is.
Councillor Hudson, this is a comment by one of the objectors, not by Mr Harper.
Oh, it says following neighbour notification that 25 further letters have been received on the following grounds. So I thought Mr Harper might wish to comment on that.
Okay.
I can't comment on that.
Any other questions for Mr Harper? Shall we move to the next speaker, applicant Natalie Blackston?
You have 3 minutes, and I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and members. My name is Natalie Blackston and I work for First Choice Homes. We welcome the recommendation by officers to approve this application for 27 affordable family homes on land at Perlebank in Shawver. And I would like to take this opportunity to reinforce why planning permission should be granted. In the Housing Delivery Test 2018, Oldham's performance in relation to housing delivery is that it delivered only 64% of the total number of houses required throughout the borough. It is therefore clear that over recent years the Council has failed to deliver the number of houses it requires. This proposal will clearly help meet housing need in an area that has seen limited house building over recent years. Furthermore, the proposals provide a fantastic opportunity to give local people the chance to gain access onto the property ladder where they might otherwise not have the opportunity to do so. First Choice Homes has been working closely with the Council for a number of years in developing a joint vision to transform Shawver, and in 2014 a Memorandum of Understanding between both organisations was agreed and signed. This agreement outlined a 10-year regeneration plan for Shawver. As a result of this cooperation, First Choice Homes has invested approximately £10 million in Shawver over recent years, and we have a future plan to invest a further £13 million in the coming years. Whilst it is acknowledged that the proposals will result in the loss of a parcel of open space, it is clearly recognised by officers that Perlebank and the surrounding area has a more than adequate supply of open space. Indeed, there is a children's play area and a multi-use games area located directly next to the site. However, as part of the proposals, a series of mitigation measures have been put forward. Detailed discussions have taken place with officers, the wider project team and the trustees of the Millennium Green and the Fullwood Nature Reserve to ensure that the new areas of open space proposed are usable and accessible spaces for all members of the community. The visualisations provided as part of the planning application give an indication of what the new open space will look like and how it will function. Furthermore, First Choice Homes will enter into a Section 106 agreement to secure the implementation and long-term maintenance of the proposed open space. Finally, in partnership with Oldham Council, First Choice Homes are working on an Interreg Northwest European funded project known as Red Wolf. Red Wolf aims to facilitate the uptake of low-carbon technologies to reduce CO2 emissions from homes with photovoltaics without gas connection. The Red Wolf project will test the system on 100 pilot properties, and the properties at Perlebank have been identified to help deliver the Red Wolf project on behalf of the Council. In summary, the proposed development will have substantial social, economic and environmental benefits for the borough and will constitute a vital element of the regeneration efforts made by both First Choice Homes and the Council to invest in this area. We therefore ask members of the committee to approve the proposals in line with the Planning Officer's recommendations. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Jack?
Yeah, I'm looking at the picture on there. It really doesn't give any indication that that is a really nice place for children's play. On the previous application, you could see the landscaped area and, you know, the vision for that area. But it's, is it like a pitch there or a thing? I'm really confused as to. I'm really confused as to what is going to replace it for the children. I know you spoke about it, but have we got any pictures of it?
Can you put the visualisation up, Graham, that you've got there? So as you can see from that one, the plan is to try, that is a very overgrown area at the moment that's inaccessible to members of the community. So the plan... So the plan is to reintroduce some woodland footpaths, to put in some benches. There'll be an area of...
Can you let the applicant speak, please?
There'll be some benches and some seating areas overlooking the green belt, the top end, and there'll be some informal areas for some open sort of play areas for the children. Not formal spaces, but sort of woodland play, stepping stones, that type of thing in the top corner. That also links, we're going to improve the links down into the Fullwood Nature Reserve. At the bottom of the Nature Reserve there's a big football pitch. At the moment the pathways are not that safe to walk down, so we're going to cut back all the open bushes and shrubs and make that path much more usable and friendly, so people have a clear link from the top end of Purley Bank down into the Nature Reserve.
Questions? Councillor.
I missed a bit. Did you say that you'd consulted with people, and was it residents' groups?
We have had discussions with the trustees of the Millennium Green and also the Fullwood Nature Reserve to try and come up with some proposals in discussions with Graham and Steve about how to make these sort of open spaces accessible for the public. There is a lot of open space already in Shalver, but it's not well used because it's not accessible. So the philosophy kind of behind our open space proposals is to make what is there, existing open space, accessible to all members of the community.
We just have questions from the committee, please. Any other questions? Councillor Williamson.
I'm not really sure that you answered my question. Did you consult with local residents about this?
Let the applicant answer, please.
We did an initial consultation prior to the submission of the planning application, and then as part of the planning application proposals, obviously the council carried out their own consultation, and as a result they asked us to provide some more information on open space, and we therefore came up with these proposals and we submitted them to the council.
Councillor Malik.
I know you mentioned about seating area and footpath and all that. Will you consider putting some play equipment for the children?
There is some natural play equipment proposed in the top corner next to the seating area, sort of stepping stones, log areas for them to walk on. But there isn't any proposals for some, because there's an existing play area on Purley Bank already, there's no plans to put any sort of hard slides and swings and things on that.
Planning condition that you consider that?
Yeah.
Any more questions? Move on to the next speaker. Councillor Cosgrove.
Thank you. I'm here today to support the local community in their objection to the proposed First Choice Homes planning application of 27 houses on the land at Purley Bank. As you can see from the number of objections and the evidence given in each objection, that this piece of land is very important to and well used by the community, and they see it as an extension of the Purley Bank Park, which is situated at the side. My family originate from Shalver, and I grew up as a girl on Shalver, facing this plot of land in the original houses, before my family moved to Durka. I remember the old original houses, the shops, the flats, including the reasons behind the need of regeneration. The area became a hotbed of what we now call antisocial behaviour. This was thought to be because of the overdevelopment in the area, with little or no green open spaces between the homes, so it felt like a concrete jungle. The flats of Purley Bank were left empty for many years, never fully tenanted because of the problems with rising damp, flooding and tenants unable to warm their homes. There were many good residents and families who made up the community, and many are still living there today, as Shalver is like being in the countryside with nature on your doorstep. As the now councillor for this area, representing the residents who live here now, I share their concerns of not wanting to go back to the old days by overdeveloping the area. The regeneration happened many years ago with less homes being built, many which were detached or semi-detached, creating this community with open space, including the site involved in the planning application. This community space is now where First Choice Homes want to build houses, which will take away a community open space and a local fruit route, which is used by many residents on a daily basis. This space is safe and the surrounding neighbours keep an eye out. Parents can watch their children playing safely from their houses, and many friendships have blossomed within the community because of this open space. First Choice Home acknowledge that this area of open space is not surplus and also how much this open space is used, including what a loss it will be to the community. But no point do they offer to compensate the community for the loss of this flat, accessible open space. If this land was to be developed, then as stated in the Oldham Council's Joint Core Strategy, any development on open space must clearly benefit the community and outweigh the loss of this open space. It is mine and the community's opinion that the loss of this open space would be a huge negative impact on the residents' health and well-being. The benefits of the houses on the application do not mitigate for the loss of this open space. The landscaping suggested is not like for like, is not accessible for all the activities which take place currently on the Purleybank site. The consultation of this planning application has been very inconsistent, with little information or consultation with the neighbouring community. Residents have raised concerns about how First Choice have not been willing to engage or take on board their concerns. First Choice Homes have recently changed the application plans. There has been no consultation on the current plans, and it has been the dismay of the residents of how First Choice Homes has blatantly ignored the importance of the community and resident engagement in the planning process, especially as First Choice Homes are Oldham's main social housing provider. There has been no consultation at all on the new plans, as these plans were not available to the 14th of June for the community to see. Whilst I have been consulting with residents, they have raised many concerns about how this development will affect them, and if successful, how future residents would suffer. Residents on Avron Rise are concerned about surface water flooding. They are already experiencing regular flooding. Oldham Council's flooding officer has already assessed there is a need for substantial flood works to be done in the area. But if there was more houses built, would this increase the flooding issue to existing residents in the surrounding homes, and how would they deal with that? The parking provision for the new houses is insufficient, with 10 of the planned houses only having one space, creating the need for on-street parking. The average parking availability for any new development in Oldham is 1.2 cars per property, but the area of Shulver is an area of isolation with little or no access to public transport, especially if you have any form of disability or during the winter months. There is little or no public amenities, all the schools are full, so residents in the area need transport to access shops, hospital, work, dentists, doctors, so more private transport will be needed. Residents have raised concerns as to the plot of the land being used previously as a historical foot and mouth burial site, which is well known by residents researching their area's history, so how will this affect the building? Farmers use the road at the side of the proposed development for access to farms and fields for agricultural vehicles. Has this been taken into account? Additional vehicles using on-street parking will restrict farm vehicle access, as they cannot use the road once it is double parked, which has been already evidenced several times this year. The points I would like the Planning Committee to consider are the loss of open space and how building these 27 houses does not mitigate the loss of this open space, which can be seen by the number of objections evidence how much this open space is used by the residents and families on a daily basis. If this planning application was successful, where would the same activities take place in the local community, as there is no other flat, accessible green open space nearby, and First Choice has not made available any flat green open space. The need for additional parking space is due to the lack of nearby facilities. Siting of the development in an area of isolation with very little public transport, especially during winter months. Existing flooding issues and the documented need for extensive flood works to stop the flooding of existing homes before any development happens. The effects the development would have on endangered species seen feeding and hunting on this site: peregrine falcons, lapwings, badgers and bats. St James councillors have asked for an up-to-date ecological report, as the information used by First Choice in this application is not factual, especially as the information is over 10 years out of date. No recent sightings have been mentioned or badger fatalities listed on nearby roads found documented by Oldham Council. I ask the Planning Committee to refuse this application on behalf of the residents of Shulver.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Do we have any questions for Councillor Cosgrove? Councillor Jacks.
on this document it says the development will only attract persons who will have a total lack of regard for the local community and will not wish to create cohesion with existing families who have invested in the area. But my question is again, as the previous one, what about your families in Shulver who have children, teenagers, young married couples who want somewhere to live in their area? Where are they going to live if we don't build new houses for them?
Come to Durka, we've got plenty of land. And the other thing is, if you look at the plans for the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework, there is plans to build a lot of houses in the valley, which could be all right for that families like that.
Any other questions? Councillor Akhtar.
What was the open space used for? What's it used for at the moment?
It's an extension of the park. It's a fruit route. It's the flat space outside of Pearly Bank Park, which is used by all the kids playing football, cricket, everything. Dog walkers.
Disabled people know the green space.
The path runs down the middle between the fruit trees.
The kids play things like manhunt on it that they can't play.
My wife uses it and can't use any other green bit space because she's disabled, so you're taking that off her.
Is there no questions? Should we open up for debate? Councillor Hartnett.
Yeah, it is lovely down there. I did go down there one winter when it was snowing, and that was challenging, shall we say. Councillor Cosgrove mentioned about the ecology report being out of date. I wonder if an officer could comment on that, please.
For you, Chair. Yeah, it's the same issue applies. This application's been in for some time, and obviously the report was prepared before the application, so it's not a current in that sense, but it is a recent report. But again, my comments on the Hodgeclough application equally apply. The area that we're dealing with, yes, it's on the edge of what we might call a wilder area, but essentially it's predominantly mown grassland.
Councillor Gary.
There's a statement here. Let's have a look. The development, it will only attract persons who will have the total lack of regard for the local community and will not wish to create cohesion with existing families who have invested in the area. Can you tell me where you've got your proof of that from?
I think it's from one of the objectors that put a comment in, so I don't know who that was, so it's not come from me. It's not representative of the residents I've been working with.
Yeah, it just seems a bit of a rude,
Yeah,
sweeping statement. Yeah.
Absolutely, totally agree with that. That is a rude statement, but that's not representative of the people who live on Pearly Bank. That's one.
Councillor Jacks.
What are the implications of it being a foot and mouth burial site?
I have to say, when that comment was mentioned, I was just looking through the comments and the objections that have been raised, and I couldn't actually find any reference to that. So it's not an issue that we've previously dealt with. Obviously, I'm not an expert on this, but I understand that there are other legal requirements that if there is evidence that their body's buried under the site, then there are certain other statutory procedures that would need to take place. Again, as members know, the planning system is one of many statutory controls, and the granting of planning permission wouldn't override any other restrictions that might exist if that was proven to be accurate, that the site had been used as a burial ground. Chair.
So, Graham, if there was dead cattle buried underground, they wouldn't build on there then?
I'm not sure the difference between cattle and human beings. I mean, I've certainly in the past dealt with sites that were previous burial grounds where human remains had to be removed from the site.
Right.
But as I say, that's done under a separate legislative process. If there were problems with the site, then as I say, planning permission, as you know, doesn't override any other restrictions, whether it's a covenant or whatever on the site. But I have no, as I said, it's the first I'd heard of that, so there's no evidence that I've come across that is actually the case on this site.
Anybody else got any more comments?
Yeah, we talked about Pearler Bank Play Park and how lovely it is. So how significant a strip of land is this next to the big park?
Can we let the councillor answer, please?
There's a park at the end, and this piece of land is an extension of that park, where they've got proper play equipment, swings, slides, climbing frame. Then you've got a mugger, and then you've got a grass field, which is used for football matches and cricket.
There's a picture of it.
Yeah, there's a picture of it. If you turn it round, you can see the park at the other end, I'd hope. You can in the distance, so you can see it. Oh, but it's that way.
You can see the mugger there.
There's the fencing.
To you, Chair, just because the site adjoins the play area, which you just see with the fenced area to the south of the site. So that's where the application site would adjoin that area.
Councillor Hume.
I know you raised the issue of the flood risk, and I know that in the report it says that the doesn't include the flood risk assessment submitted does not include an adequate drainage investigation, and I know that it is a condition of the of the development if it is to be approved. But I just this is my second planning meeting, so I do apologise for my ignorance on this. But surely that's something that should happen before it's approved rather than being conditioned on the thing. I don't know. Are you okay to go into detail about why that's okay to do sort of after it's been approved?
Yeah, it's not actually unusual. The only reason why you would not determine an application is if there was clear evidence that the drainage issues could not be overcome. That's not the information that we've got. So there is a need for a system to be put forward, but it's not unusual for planning conditions of that type to be imposed in these circumstances. The views from the council's drainage team are that there is a need for further details of that, but they've not indicated to us that it's not capable of being overcome with a suitable system.
Councillor Hartness.
Yeah, I was just going to see if we could have the local councillors comment on that one.
To my knowledge, Anthony, can't say his last name, that one, he's done a huge flood assessment on it, and it needs really substantial works because there's about 5 properties on Avron Rise that flood on a regular basis. He was meant to send a report through to planning because I did flag it up twice, that he needs to be aware of the situation.
There's been 4 abandoned surveys.
Yeah, because of flood works.
With that in mind, I mean, what Councillor Dickman just said, would it then be reasonable for us to defer this application pending the flood risk assessment?
No.
Shall we put that to a vote then? Oh, sorry, Councillor Hume.
I was just going to also add an up-to-date ecological report to that as well.
Yep, could do that.
Councillor Jackson. Yeah, on the foot of Mouth burial ground.
So proposal has been made for deferral, so those in favour of deferral.
Those in favour of deferral, please raise your hands. I think that's unanimous.
Yes, carried.
Okay, Chair, I can confirm that that matter's been deferred.
Been deferred.
Subject to the points just made around the ecological report, foot and mouth, and obviously flood risk.
Item number 8 on the agenda, pages 53 to 62, St James's Vicarage, Vicarage Street, Shaw. Do we have any queries about the recommendation?
I'll move it, Chairman.
Put it to the vote then.
Yep.
Shall put it to the vote then?
Those in favour?
I think that's unanimous. That's application's passed. Also, item number 9 on the agenda, which is basically the same building.
I'll move it, Mr. Chairman.
You have a speaker here.
Oh no, does it? I don't. What? Stephen, would you like to speak, Stephen?
No, I'm happy for you to make a decision.
Should leave well alone, but it's up to you.
We moved it. Yeah. It's good to the vote then.
Moved and seconded.
Second. Okay. Planning applications approved. Now that's the end of the meeting. Until the next time. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I just say, you've had a very difficult night, and despite